The skeleton key lies on the stairs. I should have been a little prepared.
Okay, so those who try to break the ease, let's start with the warm-up. Small one. Metaphor, ReFantazio stories horribly written. Yeah, why not? It is horribly off. So let's start where his arguments start. This type 2 production. So let's get this a bitch started and see how far I can go with the time I got. No captions. Sucks. We will go and go.
And lacking in subtlety of any kind. And what makes this game hard to take seriously is that it is constantly undermining its own themes and messaging. Now, let me give you one example. This game beats you over the head with racial discrimination. That the Kingdom of Uchronia is racist. They're horribly racist. They are constantly discriminating against lesser races. And so the game constantly asserts that all tribes are equal. Now, one of the things they do is they
Where are you proving that? Have you played the game, or did you get this interpretation from some other third party? I have to wonder. I mean, there's many problems with this particular video. Not completely imperfect. I'm thinking this is just a more conservative, right-leaning sort of video essayist format. I mean, he has a friend who comes in. It's quite weird of a format, but you know what? Some people, it might be for some people, but again, his sort of proof about the story beats you over the head. Well, I say it myself in the one comment I leave here. Okay, yeah, lose me at the first point. Like, where did they say all the tribes are equal? I'm on the second playthrough, and the game didn't tell me that. If you're talking about that on the screen, should have put a time mark at that particular, when you say that. Yes, that's a fantasy. Biggest problem of the game is that they kill off the only Mr. E there. One who looks at the book and says, yeah, that seems like BS. He goes heavy into spoilers, so
is they conflate the word tribe with race and culture. They make no distinction. The problem is this game asserts that all tribes should get along and be considered equal with no examination as to why there is inequality. The game gives you stereotypes about the various races, but tries to convince you that they're not true.
I mean, gives you stereotypes, yes. There is traits that each of the races have within the game. They have various stats when you get each party member. They have different strengths, and you can sort of even them all out if you want to, but typically you're gonna put a certain person in a certain role within your party. That's how it generally works in these. Not engaging with the actual mechanics of it, factoring that into the story, and the fact that he's clearly wrong. And the funny part is the actual book is a fantasy that he's basing this weird reading off of. This could be flipped on its head, and that reading could be pretty much the Communist Manifesto. This fantasy book. It's a fantasy about a utopia. Sounds like communism to me. I don't know why he doesn't pull that out. Maybe he doesn't see it. Maybe he's just really trying to find any angle to take down this supposedly woke game. Yeah, woke elements. Also has some, what I would call, base elements within it.
True. So there are two tribes in this game. Let's hold up side by side. You have the Parapus. The Parapus are kind of this world's furries, and they are treated with contempt in every major city. And then you have the Clamar, this kind of the ruling race. And this game says you should treat them both equally. But the problem is they aren't
Again, where does it say you should treat them equally? The game says that the Clamar get treated like disposable trash, and all they can do is these low-born jobs out there. They are looked down upon, experimented on. Sorry, spoilers for me also.
They aren't equal contributors to society by any means. Because when you go to look in the memorandum, the game itself describes the Parapus tribe. It describes them as hedonistic.
I don't know if he's.
But when you look under the Clamar section, it says they value freedom and dislike illogical restraint and enjoy cultivating discussion. Now, which one of these two tribes do you think is more conducive to a civil society?
The non-furry one
of the game.
Perfect. You're right. So the non-furry tribe actually happens to rule, wouldn't you know? But the game doesn't have the nuance to see that people are more than just their race and more than just their culture.
Well, this
Where are the examples of discrimination are bad? There is a lot of characters within it who don't like the discrimination, but a lot of the characters that you meet up with are pretty much the ones being discriminated against. I just don't know what this reading.
This game could never take such a brave stance.
Even the
that
one
not all cultures or
Kamari
values are created equal.
race
Yes,
character
because that would be
you get in
racist.
your party.
Well, and it
he's
beats
sort
you
of
over
a
the head with that, saying
lowborn
discrimination's
noble,
bad, discrimination's
having a
bad,
fight to get
without
his
ever
story
discussing
back.
why the discrimination exists.
Story. I'm trying to get the story back. To get back his sort of, let me not spoil that, but yes, so to speak, this is a rather reductive reading of this, and he really doesn't support it with anything. So this, you might buy this if you're of a certain perspective, and if you actually played the game. I did. And yeah, it doesn't come across that way to me.
Exist, and if there are justifiable reasons for the discrimination. And the reality in this world, and even the reality in that world, though the writers don't seem to get this, is that there are some cultures and ideologies that simply do not mesh.
Bing bong, he cannot actually separate fiction from reality. This is like a litmus test for people. When you have to fucking pull from a real world, when metaphor, ReFantazio. I'm going to fuck up that name this whole time. It's a fun name to say, but doesn't roll off the tongue really well. Yeah, you got to pull from the reading. This is the Japanese. They don't do woke or anything like the Western market. So why should they actually care about any of these elements? And why should it be in their fantasy?
Based on what you're saying, it also sounds like they can't comprehend that any race could.
And the second guy definitely sounds like he did not even play the game or watch it at all, based on what you're saying. Standpoint theory. Okay. A very leftist approach.
Take on any
Nice guy.
culture or set of values.
Yes. Again, they conflate tribe to mean not just race or culture, race and culture. As if these things are inseparable. Whatever race you are determines the culture that you have.
Almost as if black people.
No. They generally do tend to be homogenized. Races tend to be homogenized, but there is different cultures within the main cast. There's different cities with different cultures. Sometimes they're different races, sometimes they're mixed together. So I don't know where he's pulling this shit from, and he's not supporting anything, but confirmation bias for those who want to find a reason to call metaphor ReFantazio a horribly written story, which I heavily disagree with. And
black people born in America that have lived there their whole lives have a different culture from black people born in Africa.
All right, we don't talk about that. Again, the game has these heavy themes of.
Yeah, exactly. The different cities have a different fucking cultures, but you gotta have this secondary guy who didn't play it interpret it for the other person who apparently did play it. Yeah, I am wondering about that.
Themes of anti-discrimination. But the problem is the game goes against that message by presenting the Nidia tribe as all liars. Because every representative you have of the Nidia tribe is a liar. You have Juna, who becomes a party member, who lies about lying in her first social link with you. Then you have Alonso, who is a con man. And then you have another candidate for the throne who is called, and I kid you not, Jin the Charlatan.
The subtlety is amazing.
You can't.
They have a culture based on deception, and other tribes don't trust them because they got a cute chibi form. Sometimes playing into stereotypes is a way to deceive people even better than being true to who you are. But that's a rather complex topic that I don't think this reductionist take, which seems to be going, oh yeah, so stupid. I'm not even understanding what this issue is here.
You can't make it up. The party member that you get, she even says, Nidia are all liars.
But he just did make this up. It is based on things that very cherry-picked scenes that really have no relations with the actual story. I mean, I only got halfway through this before I'm like, yeah, let me cover it. But at the end of the day, it's
as a
not
joke,
very-
and then lies about lying, which is just crazy. And she further says people have no shortage
She's
of
lying
opinions.
about lying. So crazy. I swear.
About the Nidia. We're friendly liars, voracious cowards, streetwise swindlers. And it's like, yeah, you're right. Every one of you are.
Let me get this straight. All of the Nidia are liars, but they're so crap at lying, they tell people that they're lying.
Everyone assumes it, so the Nidia take the radical stance of proving them right. And speaking of proving them right, what's hilarious is you will have characters in the game that unironically think that everyone of the same race thinks the same thing. Near the end of the game, you meet a woman named Gruide, who comes out and says, without divided tribes, what could they have disagreed on?
Exactly. She's talking about the story in the book. Again, something he's sort of leaving out. So either he has some weird reading where this book and the actual real world within the story are the same thing somehow. He didn't actually fully play it. Or, yeah, you know, the third thing. Let me apply my 4Ds: dumb, dishonest, or delusional. Or D, all of above. Could just have a very slanted sort of perception of this, which would sort of fall under delusional, a mild version of that. But I'm not thinking that is the case given the lack of distinction with the examples he actually does try to cite, which would only really work on someone who didn't actually play the game, like his friend.
It sounds awfully similar to the last president saying,
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
like, where's the difference?
Again, a political angle not based in the game. But maybe this is all a joke, just a prank, bro. He's just a small channel, bigger than me, but he's at least doing better than some other people doing some similar type content than himself and his friend, I guess.
Difference.
Same energy.
Take what this game just taught you about race and culture, and then compare that to an actually good game with subtlety and nuance like Mass Effect 2, and you will find that these things are world.
You got to love the comparison here. Look at this Mass Effect. Yeah, they got some distinction between the different races. South Park meme, nothing of any value overall there. So
Encourage
go
you
on.
for engaging in it. When you read, what you want to do is to repeat whatever your fairy companion thinks so that you will get the most roll of her 2 points, because if you guess something other than what she thinks, you're punished by getting less of them. Now, the same thing's true when you go to debate other candidates.
This is going to be very funny. It forces you. No, you can speak your mind and not give the correct answer, and you'll still get something for it. It gives you more freedom within this. Well, and he's going to contradict himself. The consequences aren't real. And I love this talking point here. Not every game needs to have real decisions. And opposing that standards on a JRPG, when that's typically something more emphasized in American RPGs, seems a little, you know what I'm trying to say.
Because another activity that you can do whenever you're in a town is engage in political debates, because of course you're not the only candidate. There are a bunch of other candidates. These candidates are the epitome of caricatures. Like, let me go down the list. You have the candidate, his name is Loveless. His campaign is free beer. This is the level of nuance we're dealing with. A political candidate runs for the throne on the promise of free beer to everyone.
Love it. Love it. These are common people. Everyone has a chance. You think every one of them is going to be smart? Hell, most of them aren't. Poor, uneducated people. Charismatic, but they aren't probably very educated or know what will get people around. There's different perspectives in here. So he goes through all the joke ones. I will agree. A very joke. They got a few good lines in here. I'll give them.
Should rule and be at the top instead of the Clamar people, because they're the best at war. Now, Rudolph is a bit of an edgy boy.
All tribes will live in rightful segregation.
Sounds kind of racist.
Well, it's a caricature. They're like, oh boy, look at how racist he is.
I'm noticing a bit of a theme for kids.
No, just exploring different ideas. Trying to call the racist on them. I mean, are these guys leftists? Calling people left? Oh, I forget there's the woke right. I don't think they're the woke right. Okay. I think they're completely political savants, obviously.
4 characters in that none of these are characters. They're all caricatures.
It's so blunt. It's so overt and on the nose. And again, when I listen to other YouTubers talk about this, not one of them mentions that. Not one. But let's keep going. Then you have...
Yeah. Why should they? A very tropish sort of identity out there. So they disagree with you, so you get mad and be like, yeah, bring this up. So mad that you're fucking leaving out some fucking details? Is your anger about what other people are saying about it that's sort of making you forget about it and just taking a reactionary stance? I'm not going to place it on him.
Then you have Lena, who thinks that everyone should have gauntlet runners, which a gauntlet runner in this universe is pretty much the same as a car. That's essentially. And then you have Julian, who says we should limit hunting animals. And now we start to get into the place where things get a little weird. A lot of these other candidates, they ran on what's essentially a joke. These last 2 candidates I'm going to tell you about, they have at least some policy, even if it's minimalistic and not developed in the slightest.
And just to let everyone know out there who hasn't played the game, this is just a mini game. Does everything need to be a fully fleshed out, complex story? Is he even going to get into the main story? Yeah, he does for a bit. Maybe he'll get into more of it. Let's see how he distorts that.
The slightest. But candidate number 7, Glaudel, when you debate him, you have to debate against the idea of a meritocracy. Why on earth would I want to do that? Now, get this last one, because this one's crazy, as if the other ones weren't crazy enough. Candidate number 8, his name is Roger. Roger is a libertarian and runs on abolishing taxes. You have to argue for taxation. And the right answer to this debate is taxes, and I quote, taxes benefit everybody. This game legitimately wants you to be pro-taxation, as if taxation isn't theft. Roger's
bing bong, libertarian dipshit. Throwing his own personal standpoint, reading on this personal thing here. And typically, libertarians tend to have some very interesting morality when it comes to such things here. I can't say it's absolutely wrong, but that is very telling.
Roger's absolutely based. I would vote for Roger. But again, because the game demands that I play by its rules, well, I have to argue that taxes are great.
And you don't have to. You are rewarded for that. And frankly, I think it teaches you more that you have to lie to be a politician, which seems to be a universal truth. He seems to get mad that the game forces you to do that. It doesn't, by the way. You can go against it, and he has a problem with that also. So it's like this sort of weird, damned if you do, damned if you don't. I believe, player choice is the illusion.
They're great. Moving on in terms of talking about the messages that this game undermines on a regular basis. This game also constantly says that you have to conquer your own fear and anxiety and not rely upon others. That's one of the messages it pushes, facing your own fears, overcoming anxiety on your own, not relying upon others to do it. The problem is the entire kingdom relies upon the main character to overthrow Luis to fix their anxiety. Because if the main character does not...
Yes, the population gives in to their fears. You, as the hero, has to overcome your fears. Fight through rather insane odds. And then even after it seems like you win, I think he's going to get into that. And his reading on that is definitely interesting. Again, this seems like damned if you do, damned if you don't. Not a very good analysis of the actual story. Just trying to nitpick it to death for those who want to find a reason to call it a horribly written story.
Does not do that, humanity is doomed. So again, you have the game undermining its own themes, and it does it constantly. The next theme is that democracy is great.
Well, when you oppose imaginary themes on the game, of course it's going to undermine your imaginary themes that you're trying to apply on that.
Democracy is awesome. The king values democracy so much that he set up the royal magic in such a way that it is now going to guarantee that democracy is done. Now, the problem is the democracy.
Calling this democracy is a little bit of a bullshit thing. This is a popularity contest. Does this guy not understand democracy? How different ones are set up? This is just a straight up popularity contest. That's it. I'll agree. Democracy is awesome, but it's not just a popularity contest. At least not in America, which maybe I have American bias. There's all sorts of things. This sort of emulates the sort of presidential sort of thing, but no electoral college. This guy might be a libertarian, so I'm pretty sure they don't like that. I don't know. They had a split a while ago. Hard to say he's into it or just surface level libertarian, or maybe just sharing taxation is theft philosophy from the libertarians.
Democracy that he sets up is actually rigged. The democracy that he wants the citizens of Ukraine to engage in is about as fair and free as the 2020 election. Because
yeah, it was just for that jab. Completely just throwing in it and sort of pulling back from some of these, right-wing points here. Not judging the fucking game for what it is, but what it means to American of his particular perspective. Standpoint theory, it's a cancer, just like most identity politics. Yeah. Even some on the right embrace it, hence why the term woke right is getting talked about right now.
Because the king, who is the main character's father, is also the character Moore, who you find in academia, who helps you unlock more archetypes, which archetypes equate to power. So this king, who wants democracy to be free and have a free and fair election, is empowering the main character to give him the strength to overthrow the main antagonist. And furthermore, your mother, the queen, who is deceased but casts some crazy gypsy magic to separate her soul from her body, is the same.
Crazy gypsy magic. It's a pagan. Get her out of here. Burn the witch. Fucking hell. I gotta admit, this is somewhat funny and just the dumbest fucking way. I gotta give this guy some credit at least. I admit that he's not sort of bringing up the fact that you start as a no one, fighting against the odds, being the most hated of the races or tribes. They pretty much are the same. The culture, not all culture is actually shared among individuals within people in that races. Just because there's little pamphlets that give you quick little things, generalizations about races and things, does not mean it applies equally everywhere. That's collectivist bullshit, and the game goes against going into those stereotypes. Yeah, to see why this video is so flawed and how it's done, and frankly, how it doesn't even really engage it with the writing of this. He's trying to tackle the themes, and the themes are not the writing. That's the subtext.
The same woman who enables you to use the archetype in the first place and who sets you on the path. So again, this doesn't sound like a free and fair election. There is some meddling going on here.
Well, with what you've told me, this game wants.
This is just like a overlay, a way to throw someone's politics and a game from the East. Sounds like they're trying to co-opt the Japanese people, who a lot of Americans who aren't happy with the way the American entertainment, such as myself, has moved over to enjoying manga, anime, and video games from the East. But this dunderhead has a problem because it's so loved and probably has some woke elements and it triggers him. I don't know. I don't know why he's doing this horrible video. I mean, it is probably seal claps from his particular those who share his particular instincts politically, and not game wise though. Well, there is a certain amount of people into it. Game wise, then it has some crossover that isn't directly tied to politics, but that's a whole nother rabbit hole right there.
Game wants to push the message that democracy is great,
Good
but
morning.
their idea of democracy is a king helping his son progress fast.
They're trying to break down metaphor ReFantazio's story, horribly written, and they're tackling the subtext. What a bunch of leftists! I swear, the writing. Yeah, fucking hell. They just want the Western market to dominate. Wait, no, they don't.
Faster than the other candidates and eventually take over.
Right. The king enforces democracy by way of royal magic so that he can reinstate the monarchy. As it pertains to all these themes, I think everyone can agree the game has some fine messages, some messages that I'm sure we can all get behind, which is don't discriminate on the basis of race. Democracy is pretty cool. Conquer your fear and anxiety. Everyone agrees with that. The problem is that the game is a shoddy vehicle for...
The problem is not everyone agrees democracy. Extremists don't like democracy very much. And fucking hell, why is there a fucking parade outside my window? Hopefully, that's not going to come through. But hope it's not a gay pride parade. That would be funny.
For those messages, because it can't handle them with the nuance and the care that they demand. And so it creates caricature upon caricature upon caricature. And it's really infantilizing as it tries to push these messages upon you. Now, moving on even further, this game allows for you to make various choices, whether it's in social links or just in average conversation as the story progresses. The issue is the vast amount of dialogue choices are utterly meaningless, and are often you saying the same thing different ways. Now, I mentioned
I mean, he's sort of right. I have to give him points there. Sometimes you can take the wild guess, not the wild guess, but the out there thing that you shouldn't really be saying. Sometimes you'll be stopped, sometimes you won't. You don't always have control. It is a little bit lame, the choices in the game, but it's more of a on rails narrative, as most JRPGs are.
the fairy guide Gallica, she is so obnoxious and handholdy that she will constantly make decisions for you or correct you whenever the game doesn't like the choice that you made, and often won't even allow it. And furthermore, she is constantly yapping in your ear every 5 seconds about bounties, about requests.
Okay, sure. You want to deal with this? We'll see how this goes. This is something. I am curious your thoughts on this particular thing.
About informants. This broad never quits yapping. In combat, she reminds you of the enemy's weaknesses constantly, and even in the overworld. If you have 85% health, she is going to yap in your ear until you heal that 15%. This broad runs your life.
So not only does she handhold you,
She runs your life. Whoa. You're getting pushed around by a fairy girl. Fucking hell. Oh, man.
Yeah,
You want to respond to this video with me here?
Yeah, partially, but like I want to kind of bring a like. Do you know the game's main story or like the main point?
I played through it completely. I mean, the
Okay,
main point. What is your
I'm-
interpretation of the main point?
At least from what I've seen from various standpoints, and also recently going through a video analyzing the story, I feel the main story of metaphor is talking about metaphors as the general concepts of the game. Like, the thing is, from at least the Max Derat's complete analysis of the main core of the game, it's less about politics and like this whole election, and more about the idea of how should humanity solve its problems, and it's basically brings various choices that are present, but the two main ones being the religious one and also the one that Luis brought, which is nihilistic one slash the one where you personally try to be better. Both options
It's
have their
more
drawbacks.
survival of the fittest. It's more survival.
Yeah,
of the
survival.
fittest.
Yeah, but like it starts as a Nietzschean idea of like you should be the best man, and then it evolves into the survival of the fittest because, well, it is the end goal of meritocracy, and in the end, it's like divided itself into two camps. Basically, the people who can't do basically the whole going and becoming metaphors and shit like that, going more onto religious side and needing a strong figure, and basically everybody else who believes that they can individually overcome everything, being on Louis's side. But what I've seen from Max's point of view, or Max Drat's videos point of view, is that like the story main idea is to drop both of these questions and focus on the core of the issue, which is why are people going to that or the other choice? It's the anxiety of the situation, the anxiety behind you manifesting your own ideal and your basically metaphor. That's the main point of the game. It's trying to basically tell the viewer that although there are these options, the most saner JRPG option, as per usual, is fight God and do the fucking clearance of your anxiety, because it's a common theme in JRPG. But like, I would also agree here that there are a few things that the game kind of lacks in, and people kind of notice that like the games with Atlas are sometimes caught in these editions. So sooner or later, I assume they will add back some stuff with the director's cut. We don't know, but there's been a lot of complaints in the department of like character, like uh, like flirting, stuff like that, stuff connected to some dialogue choice options being shallow and basically railroading you back into the same things. And yeah, I can see that
I mean, the
being a
examples
problem.
he's using about the various politicians is just horrible. I mean, you're right. There is a lot of characters, and a lot of them come off stereotypical and tropish. But when you start to get to know them,
I would
they're
I would
much
say that like
deeper. When you go into the individual storylines, they seem superficial on the surface. But if you get every one of the characters on the surface fits a certain stereotype, archetype. But when you get to
yeah,
know them in their personal journeys, you realize they're so much more complex. And you don't get that
yeah,
for
I can
all of
agree
the
that, but
characters.
like also like that whole level of stereotyping I think is a little bit like um intentional, because like if I am right, the story again is trying to kind of project Carl Jung's and Nietzsche's ideas of metaphors, or specifically the ideal version of yourself that you want to be, or what was the word for it? I always forget. Can you remember?
For what?
For like the ideal version of yourself that you imagine.
Actualization. I think.
Yeah, basically a rich actualization of your preferred stereotype slash metaphor. And the reason why a lot of characters, I at least assume semi-intentionally, are done semi-caricaturishly is because they're trying to basically, on surface level, explain that everybody wants to reach their ideal kind of version of themselves, thus them coming more as like paradigms over certain idea than people in certain cases. But at the same time, you could also understand that like there are the side quests, there's the other stuff that could round up the characters. But one thing I'm kind of annoyed from what I've seen of the game is like, for example, you can go and agree or disagree with certain politicians. You need to constantly go and go against the politicians or the characters you're basically going into races in with,
Yeah, but
which
you're
is a little
playing a
bit
part.
redundant.
You're playing a role when you're doing this. You're trying to fit in. It, it's not trying to tell you. The game does reward you for pretty much countering people, doing what people tell you to
Yeah,
do. Because
yeah,
that is the sort of you're trying to fit the role. Fake it until you make it. And there is
yeah,
a
that's
certain
also a
point
thing.
where you get to a point where you have to deal with a lot of fucking shit in the very end of it.
Yeah, which
Okay,
is
this
like
whole
a little bit
section.
sad that like it does that sort of thing. You could say it's a little bit callous. Another
Yeah,
thing I kind of noticed is like
yes.
sorry,
You,
somebody was here. They were asking something. I think I needed to mute myself. Another thing that I kind of noticed is again with the fairy girl. Did you get to the point where he complains about the fairy girl?
Yeah.
Yeah, with
Shoot,
her,
that's a typical
there,
trope. She's a lot less annoying than fucking the fairy from Legend of Zelda, at least.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
one of
but
the
like
thoughts. I'm like, she's not as
another
annoying
thing,
as hey.
another thing, another thing here is like problem of maybe localization because like I've gone a little bit back, dug a little bit, and the usual faces are involved into this shit. So there is a little bit of westernizing character stereotypes. Like again, I assume the fairy is one of the worst cases here because like in the Japanese texts, at least from what I heard and seen, she's more like suggestive. While here, she's more like nagging Nancy, or what do you call that stereotype in American?
Yeah, I am playing it on Japanese. The Japanese just are superior when it comes to voice
Yeah,
actors.
which
They
is
have a whole
why,
industry. The voice actors
yeah,
now, they came to a decent level probably with Viz, but many different
which is why
elements.
I just choose the Russians over Americans. What
Fair
they
enough. Fair
also
enough.
have a good range, and also like the funny thing with the anime industry of Russia or dubbing industry of there, it's basically 100, like 20 plus small fan dub communities, each with their voice actor groups, so on and so forth, and you could just pick and choose who's your favorite and just like watch for all the main animes. And if you want something niche, certain groups are doing the niches. It's pretty good. It's method of doing that, and it's free there, so no bullshit Crunchyroll fucking subscriptions.
Well, I have no argument. I don't really care for American voice
Yeah, but
acting.
like
I
back
can
to the
deal.
fairy. Long and short of it is like at least from what I've seen, there a lot of the nagginess and pettiness could have been because of retarded localizers and the usual faces being involved, like Catty.
I mean, maybe she didn't annoy me that much. Okay, I can understand the perspective on that, but yeah,
Yeah,
here's
the
another
other
weird
sad
point.
thing is the social links having less romance, which is again, I assume they will add it later in the director's cut, but like it's sad.
Maybe I actually like that I can just head canon it in. Okay, I like the fact that it's not about the romantic angle. You are the stalwart hero. Okay, sort of giving you the romantic option would sort of, I mean, I guess it wouldn't hurt, but I think they wanted to go a different direction. You definitely do get hints. It's just
Yeah, but
not with.
like yeah, but at the same time, you could kind of notice that, like, in certain sections, there is some sort of like cuttage of that thing. Like, they go to a point where you logically have the fucking link go into romance, and then cut.
Okay, maybe you're right. Maybe you're
Yeah,
right. Let's go over this point. I think this is a rather crappy point that is rather reductive with this because the whole she's annoying. I That's subjective point there.
I
The
would say
vehicles
again, blame
to leave
Catty.
each other stranded out in the desert so that they will die. Now you have a choice whether or not you go to help Liddell in his fight with Godot. Except actually you don't, because whatever you choose, it's going to result the same way. You will help Liddell
Yeah.
whether you like it or not. This is also true for other instances in the game, particularly in Martyr's dungeon. There's a shadow monster that follows you all throughout this dungeon and requires you engage in a mini game to get around it. But you can if you want to fight this thing with the warning that it's going to be very difficult for the level that you're at. So one of the things I did on New Game Plus was I fought this shadow monster before you ever fight it at the end of the dungeon, and I beat it and drove it back. But it made literally no difference at the end of the dungeon. Because when I went to the next area, guess what? That thing was right back at full health, made no difference. And when I finally fought the creature at the end of the dungeon, it wasn't weakened, it wasn't hurt, it didn't change anything in the story, it just didn't matter. Furthermore, the choice of what you do with Joanna is not a choice, regardless.
See, he seems to have the sort of Western mentality that choices. He's right.
Matter.
Player
Like,
choice. It's a
yeah,
narrative story that needs things to happen a certain way for it. It's a choice.
again,
The
I kind
design
of feel
is a
like,
choice.
yeah, but like later down the line of this video, he kind of brings up Mass Effects as an example, but like, let's be
No, that was
honest, at some
earlier.
point. Oh wait, okay, yeah, but like he was
But
basically comparing.
he
Yeah,
says something that's completely bullshit. He's like, it tells you everyone is equal. No, you're referencing the fantasy book that the main character is reading. Okay,
yeah,
you're conflating the book, and I don't know if it's his own bias or if he's actually being just intentionally dishonest. It's always hard to tell sometimes with this if they're intentionally being dishonest or if they have such a view that they conflate, like, oh, this is together.
Or it's
There's an
just
end
attention
point.
span, or like again, it's attention deficit, or like a situation of there's too much bombardment and information, and you can't just like sometimes categorize one to the other. Like
I mean, I will.
with the
That player choice is an illusion. Okay, I can agree with that.
yeah, another thing with the whole fucking thing, like again, you bring up like Mass Effect, but like as far as I know, Mass Effect also has semi-railroading of situations in their games, if I remember right, even with their choices.
I haven't played Mass Effect 2 and forever, so
At least from what I've heard or remember of the games, at least in the third entry, there was a little bit more of a railroading, but like in terms of like, oh, you have a lot of endings that you reach by your own outcomes. It's like, yeah, it would have been fucking great, but sadly nobody fucking makes RPGs like that. Like, we ain't getting another New Vegas in another 20 or so years until Chris Avalon eventually is accepted back into the industry.
yeah, probably not going to happen. But yeah,
And
he has this whole Persona 5 look here. Player choice is an illusion. He actually likes it, but he turns it into something weird.
again, I feel again
I,
Atlas has their problem of like trying to mix a more SMT shadow puppet kind of feel with a more Persona vibe, and it's like kind of backfiring sometimes.
I don't think it's backfiring. I understand what you're talking
Some
about.
it's like they're two opposite styles: the moody style versus like the more happy-go-lucky style, and it's could be sometimes crashing.
It definitely does create a sort of contrast. Okay, that probably is going to take some people off guard. I understand what they're going with the contrasts in the Persona games. You know, the real world, the bright everyday world, then you go into the shadow, whatever sort of version of the shadow realm. Here, you're just in a fantasy world, and yeah, there's definitely a stupid ass point here. I mean, he's right about this. This is very contrived here. I'll give him this one here, but this one, I hate a lot of his points.
Dungeon
Okay?
only to get
Because they're
freed by
stupid.
Gallica literal seconds later. We mentioned earlier that you can shout at Luis de Soiree that you're going to take the throne. And what does Luis do? Nothing. Despite him being built up as someone who will kill you for one wrong step, he does nothing. No one does anything. They let it slide.
He'll kill you for one wrong set. That is a very weird interpretation of that.
I feel like he's
I
more
mean,
trying
I don't
to.
think he would kill you immediately. He is a user. He uses everyone to their scenario. I think he knows from the very start you're faking it, and he's setting you up. Even goes into it in a bit.
You get captured by the Mustari, only to be freed by Fidelio and Basilio 2 minutes later. While in the Virga Islands, Fidelio gets deadly ill, but is healed completely right before he dies. Or how about this? Luis has the main character dead to rights.
He gets right before. This is just so reductive. Like, brum. I hate this sort of fucking analysis.
After beating him in a duel. But Luis doesn't kill him and allows you for the chance to stick her lance in his back. But the problem is, as Luis dies, he comes back the next day. So again, all these major pivotal plot points are happening, but it makes zero difference. It has no effect. That's not all.
But it makes sense, okay? It is set up very well, this sort of setup here. They have a character for the purpose of this. He's just
A necromancer.
yeah, literally as a necromancer on duty. That's one of the first major boss fights you have, and the
But
reason
did he
came
die
back
or
from the
did he
dead.
not die?
He did die. The necromancer.
No.
In you. Yeah, he did die. The necromancer brought him back. Okay, that is the story.
No. I'm asking like when the first boss fight happened and we found out that the necromancer did that. What happened to the necromancer? Did he just like go scot-free? Did he die, or what happened to him?
The
Because
necromancer died, but he set it up so he would be resurrected later. I'm gonna
so
take it
it's
up
like
with the fucked up state of necromancers. Okay, They're a reviled
they could have.
profession in fantasy because of shit
Yeah.
like this. Like in Dresden Files, there's necromancers who come back from the dead. Even worse, there's a lot of stories about necromancers. They have it set up properly.
Oh,
And
I would say that like one good game where there is like a lich fucking build slash story is what was the name, Pathfinder 2. Great game, and I kind of follow the studio because they're like one of the better ones at the RPGs and stuff. Also, they are kind of students of Avalon, so I'm not surprised if they would take its mantle.
It's possible. Let's go.
Luis turns the main character into a massive monster. But would you like to know what happens? Yufa heals him minutes later. And when she heals them, they're not surrounded.
That's bullshit also. You have to fight against it, okay? You come back from the brink, then you get healed, okay? You come back from the brink as the main character. There's so much distortion of this story here. And I mean, he sort of has a point here, but he sort of doesn't. With this next point, I think this is as far as I got.
All surrounded by like 50 guards. And the way they get away from the guards is fade to black. All the support that you've gathered throughout your time in the game, you lose it all, only to gain it back days later.
There's nothing better.
Bullshit. He's fucking lying. He's just straight up lying. He has to be lying here. You don't get the support back until you. No, maybe he's not technically lying. You can get it back if you rush through the boss thing. But who the fuck does that? You can. You have to do a fucking dungeon to destroy stuff to get. He's making it sound like you just get it back for no reason at all. No, it's an objective within a dungeon. I mean, maybe he leaves the context in later. This whole video is rather waste.
Nothing better in writing than when the power of editing saves the day in an unwinnable situation.
Oh, it does that here very often. Oh, and later on, this curse that you've been trying to break, the curse that's been cast upon the prince, yeah, you break the curse, but would you like to know what happens afterwards? The prince gets killed by Zorba, so it doesn't matter that you broke the curse. Oh, and actually, as it turns out, the main character becomes the prince, however that works, so forget about that plotline. Furthermore, the royal scepter, which is the thing for which all the candidates are competing, that is sort of this magic MacGuffin that can...
This guy just doesn't like subversive writing. I understand. It sets certain expectations ahead of you. What do you think about subversive writing? Yay, nay, if it's done right, set up properly, it could work.
Again, like I would say, it could work, but I would say I'm burned out on it because of Game of Thrones, and also a lot of other shit.
Yeah, everyone tries to do this subversive, like, what a twist. Fucking Ryan Johnson just did everything backwards. You expect Luke to be the hero.
At this
he just
point,
throws the lightsaber. There's plenty of examples of just really bad writers just doing the opposite of what people think.
The thing here is again a problem of more Chekhov's Chekhov's handguns, and like writers not being able to implement them correctly into a story, or like putting several ones at the same time and then misdirecting people and saying this is the loaded one, this is not the loaded one, this is loaded one, and then they all shoot and you die. It's sort of like annoying a little bit in those cases. Like, make it clear how the shit works, or make it a little bit ambiguous, then make it clear.
Yeah, in the way he sort of is so reductive with how some of this stuff plays off. It's like he wants to. I don't know if he's intentionally doing it or not, but he's definitely very misleading, intentionally or not.
George R. Martin was willing to kill anybody. That was what kept people on the edge of
And the fact that he's fucking hyping up fucking George R. Martin. I just heard recently he's like, oh, I don't know if I can finish the recent book.
I would say with George Martin, there is a problem of him not wanting to write the characters as they should end, and because of that, basically writing himself into a corner.
Yeah, it's just lame. This is why I don't start I'm reluctant to start a series that I don't think is going to finish unless
Which
it's
is why
really
I
good.
moved to Dune, which is only 6 books, and then to 5-Star Stories, which is a manga that is sadly so great. It already has an ending, but sadly doesn't end, but sadly is not finished.
Oh, well, yeah, mangas are all over the place, and then
I
the
would,
shonens that run forever also is a fucking pain
yeah,
in the
but like
ass.
you need to go check 5-Star Stories. That's some great shit.
Oh, I'm sure. I usually binge read certain mangas when I'm in the mood. Same with anime, same with video games. I'm in my video game arc now. And I think he's really mad that people are praising it so much and they're not pointing out all these things that he's finding. But the things he's finding is rather bullshit. I mean,
I feel like it's
again,
a bit in attentiveness, more like stubbornness of viewing the game this way.
yeah, I don't know how much time I want to spend on it. This is a smaller creator. So it's of course it's going to be not the greatest. Okay, and maybe he's just doing it for humor. I didn't really like plot holes and contrivances. He goes over several things. I'm like, those aren't plot holes or
Where
contrivances.
these things are immensely rare. The party tries to keep it a secret that this gauntlet runner can teleport, and somehow do.
It
Whenever
isn't
they're-
seen when it just appears in thin air.
And he has this little friend coming along, interpreted in for him. It's really weird. Who clearly hasn't played it. I don't understand the structure of this video, but oh, come on.
In thin air, and you said it's about the size of a tank.
It's bigger than a tank. It's tall. This thing is like 3 tanks stacked on top of each other.
So no one notices when it disappears out of thin air or appears in a new location.
Not to mention, there's a town crier who's following everyone around to see what they're doing, to report on their deeds. No one notices. It gets even crazier later on. Now, there's also a scene where Joanna, who is the sanctoress for the Sanctus Church, she believes that this giant, freaky baby monster is her child and feeds it children, up to 15 of them, and also feeds it.
Yeah, she lost her real child, so she went into a deep depression. Actually, the nurse, let me not say it. Okay, spoilers. Let me avoid the spoilers, but it was real tragic. So I'm sure she went into a real depressed state. And her mind just fucking broke, probably. This comes across. But his point here is very reductive. And he keeps going with the guide like it's God, okay? He's very reductive and use these little, yeah, you'll see.
Feeds it full-grown people. Now, this child is what you call in this universe a human or a monster, which very subtle, guys, very subtle.
Wait, humans are monsters?
Oh, you guys are dipshits? Clearly.
Yeah. Who would have thought? Now, the memorandum actually says humans, this monster that Joanna thinks is her child, humans, and I quote, rampage through their surroundings indiscriminately. So I have a question. Why does this human not eat Joanna? Why does it just tolerate her petting it like it's a dog?
I can answer that if you'd like.
Oh, no.
The giant
Right,
baby
exactly.
freak thing has the script.
Yes. He knows who must live and who must die. Moving on further.
No, it's called Don't Bite the Hand That Feeds You. You think they're just gonna all be the same? There's different types of humans in the series, and it gets used quite interesting. It's like he doesn't get into so many
Going
things.
further. Another contrivance, and one of the funny things is characters even mention this when it happens. Is remember the fight we talked about earlier between Gladel and Godot when they're fighting in the Gauntlet Runners?
Yep.
Out of all the places he could be, Luis, the main antagonist, somehow manages to find Gladel's runner and picks up Juna, who is one of your party members, and then talks to the main character. And one of your party members, Stroll, says, "We're lucky we managed to make contact with Luis so early." And just constantly said, "Oh, we're lucky this happened, we're lucky that happened, we're lucky this happened." Like, speaking of luck, the party has to go find a monster head as a show of strength to progress further in the contest for the throne. And one of the party members decides, well, to get ahead of a monster, we'll be creative and we'll get not the head of an actual monster, we'll get the head of a person who's a bad guy. So we'll get the head of a very evasive criminal. So they go find this criminal. Turns out he's been falsely framed by Joanna. So luckily, what Stroll manages to do is capture the guy who's been framed, who later turns into a party member, then goes and gets Joanna's head, or rather, instead of getting her head, he gets her to turn herself in. But in the meantime, just lets her wonder about Martira, free, not confined, not restrained. They just trust that she'll show up and present her head to the judges. And
we're
sure
talking
enough, she does.
And we're talking about the woman who was feeding humans to her giant baby monster.
Yes. Oh, again, characters, they all have a copy of the script and they know what has to be done.
Oh, Jesus Christ. There's a certain amount of tension, a certain amount of trust, a certain amount of faith that they put out within this. Again, this is a fantasy. And the character, they try to have good judgment. Plus, you have the man who recruited you along with the woman to help you out. It's more about, is this guy going to help us out? There's also some internal conflict if you really want to get into the actual story. Like, yeah, we got duped by this and we came across this baby, this human. I don't know why they didn't bring the human head in. That's more of a problem with this. Why didn't they bring the human head in? Why did they go with her? Probably because she felt she had sins. She came to a realization. And I can definitely understand the criticism that if they wanted to say that her character turn, like, yeah, you defeated my baby, killed my baby. All suddenly that I realize I've come out of this delusion. That could come across as a little bit contrived. Let's see if he follows.
So
up.
this woman 1 minute goes from a heartless, ruthless, child murdering woman to feeling sorry about what she did and turning herself in within the span of 15 minutes.
I'm glad murderers are so honest in this universe.
There were so many plot contrivances. One of the major parts where you see more.
That I'll give him that. It's a slight plot contrivance. Okay. At the end of the day. But a whole bunch of plot contrivances.
More plot contrivances is pretty much everything aboard the Caradrius is a massive plot contrivance. There's a door that the party has to get through. And there are literally 20 guards sitting at a table and 2 guards facing the door they need to get into. Would you like to know how they got into the door? Stroll takes the 2 guards guarding the door, sits them over at a table no more than 20 feet away from the party, and gets them drunk. And they walk on through.
Seems reasonable.
It's so stupid. Oh, by the way.
How's that plot contrivance? There's different factions within it.
I mean, like, the problem is there are 20 other guards that are next to the door.
No, those are soldiers within the army. There's only 2 people tasked with guarding that. The rest of them...
Yeah, but, like, wouldn't they notice that, like, the other 2 responsible people are leaving their post and say, hey, bitch, the fuck are you doing?
No, those other people are not the guards for that door. They only have 2 people posted at that door. The rest of them are just sitting around and drinking. They're not tasked with guarding that door. Doesn't seem to understand that, yeah, they have that duty. They failed in that duty and got distracted. You're thinking that this is a very tight ship, Luis?
No, I mean, like, wouldn't others kind of have also, like, a situation of, oh, I could be a useful person to Luis if I basically go behind the people who just entered the door and basically ambush them.
It's not the best setup, but he's definitely making it seem it's not a plot contrivance. He's just inventing that all those people sitting around are guarding that door. No, there's 2 people guarding that door, and you have to take out a lot of other guards in a mini game. And the mini game's sort of lame. I will admit that mini game's lame. Plot contrivance? Fuck no.
Oh, by the way, Gladell, you end up fighting him later. But one of the things that happens is, well, he's protected by the royal magic, so you can't hurt him. But he's just so luckily happens to use the word duel. And one of the exceptions to the royal magic is if someone...
He's really missing the chance to do the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel in this video.
Challenges you to a duel, the royal magic's off. So now you can fight. The problem is, in the memorandum's own words, in order for the duel to forfeit the royal magic, both parties have to agree. But the main character never agrees to fight Gladell. Gladell's like, oh, it's a duel then. And this goofy broad Juna is like, yeah, he'll duel you. And apparently that's good enough to suspend the royal magic and allow you to hurt Gladell. It's so dumb. It's so stupid. And on top of contrivances, you even have entire characters that are walking plot devices. You have Nuris, who somehow happens to make your gauntlet runner. He can make it seaworthy and he can make it flight ready, all in the span of a few months by tinkering when he's on the road. And I like Nuris as a character.
Again, with the reductive nature, He wanted a very variable unit. He's been working on this for a while. I'm thinking he had a lot of these things in design. Look at the shape of the runner. You think he didn't think about the sort of sailing mode for this gauntlet runner? Why designing it? He's just not engaging with anything outside of his own petty little squabbles. I'm just not seeing anything really going about the writing. It's just his personal grievances with some of the issues in this. I'll grant him a few points there. I preempted him. I'm like, yeah, her sort of change, it's a little contrived. I definitely agreed that was a contrived thing. But I understood the way they sort of like, oh yeah, baby killers. Why are you being such moralistic jackasses? You're not even bringing up the fact the trauma she went through. You think trauma is something that only affects the weak? She's a woman, okay? Give her some flexibility, okay? It's more her changing around. And even that, it's not the worst thing. It is a plot contrivance, but it's one that I think isn't that bad. And the rest of these, they're just imaginary.
This is a character, but he is absolutely a plot device. Or even worse, the absolute worst plot device and source of many contrivances in this game is Zorba. Zorba is not a character. Zorba is a MacGuffin. Whatever the plot needs him to do, Zorba will do, no matter how retarded, no matter how lucky, he finds a way to get things done. Now,
oh, Jesus Christ. Fanatical. The dude is a fanatical lunatic. It's actually brilliant how they sort of set him up. He's also one of these, huh? Okay. But yeah, I just find this really ridiculous. And it sort of counters his sort of racial thing. He's one of those three-eye people, but he sort of goes against the grain. He has individual traits and individual abilities that make him a cell at one type of magic only, a type of magic that's reviled by a lot of people.
Okay, I'm
And
back.
okay.
I had an
Luis
internet
is
problem.
understand. But yeah, the Luis character, he is just like, he uses this guy because no one else wants to deal with him. This video is just so reductive.
Now, moving on, and this is going to be very similar to some of the previous
Yeah,
ones.
move on.
You have very pivotal plot points that in this game are so dumb and make little to no logical sense. Like, you remember I was talking about the royal magic? What the royal magic is a magic that the king cast upon his death that protects the top 20 candidates for the throne. Now, the king's promise was anyone who wants to become the next king or queen can do so, anyone. But funnily enough, he made provisions for only the top 20 people. So you know what that means?
Let me guess. Anyone not in the top 20 that wants to be king just gets offed immediately?
They can get offed immediately. No protection.
Gentlemen, this is Democracy Manifest.
It's almost like the 20 elite are protected.
Which is exactly what happens. Oh, also, while you're on the Caradrius, another person infiltrates the Caradrius with you. Her name is Juna. You don't know she's there, and then you go in. Juna takes the Caradrius, takes it up into the air, and then while you're up there, people are noticing, hey, the Gauntlet Runner's taking off. What do we do? What do we do? Gallica tells you, yeah, this thing's going airborne, so why don't you step outside mid-flight? Your fairy guide companion tells you to go outside while the Gauntlet Runner is flying. I do not see what other people see in this game. I don't think I ever will. I don't get it. At every turn.
Yep, you don't get it because I'm just not understanding. Yeah, he's got a point there. She's trying to get you outside so you don't get captured by the guards. It's a stupid idea, but it's a spur of the moment panic moment. It's like he doesn't understand emotions or anything. Storytelling. And the fact that, yeah, just the start was just complete bullshit. He tries to determine the themes and so he said I could agree with a couple of points here and there. Characters and plot are incredibly stupid. Why are they incredibly stupid?
Super rare in this universe. And on top of that, They say Luis wouldn't notice if she's gone, despite Luis having seen her multiple times. For instance, Luis saw Gallica in the instance with Gladel after you save him and Juna from Godot's Gauntlet Runner. Furthermore, whenever Luis approaches you to commend you on your performance at the Exhibition of the Brave, Luis also sees Gallica there. So somehow the party's like, yeah, they wouldn't notice, despite Luis seeing her twice. And instead of sending the stealthy assassin, they're like, let's just send this fairy, who couldn't even carry off the formula if she found it. Heisman can literally pull a Batman, and they decide we're not going to send him. Now, what I also think is super stupid is that Juna has an opportunity to ask Gallica what her name is before Luis arrives, and yet never does. One of the things you'll notice is that as you talk to Juna, she's looking for a fairy named Gallica. Now, as we said before, fairies are super rare in this universe. And if Gallica had not, upon the Caradrius, blurted out her name, Juna would have never learned it. You would have never learned that Juna's the sleeper agent, and you two would have passed each other by. This whole plot line of Juna being an undercover agent is dependent. One of the things you'll notice is that as you talk to Juna, she's looking for a fairy named Gallica. Now, as we said before, fairies are super rare in this universe. And if Gallica had not, upon the Caradrius, blurted out her name, Juna would have never learned it. You would have never learned that Juna's the sleeper agent, and you two would have passed each other by. This whole plot line of Juna being an undercover agent is dependent upon Gallica clumsily blurting out her name when they're on a stealth mission.
Modern.
No, it would have fucking just happened at a different point. Why would have she asked about the fairy's name? I mean, they sort of have a point here. I have to give them some credit, but they're completely wrong about this. Look.
Modern writing at its finest.
So after infiltrating the Caradrius, Fidelio and Basilio come aboard it as it comes down to see that the main character and Juna have killed Gladel. Later on, the party goes to Luis's office, and they accuse Gladel of being the rat.
No, the magic restrained them. That is not quite the way it goes. They have a plausible explanation that he hit the 20, the magic protected him. At that point, it kicked in. I can give that should have been in the more of the plot contrivance there. Why is this in the stupid section?
Despite Fidelio later confirming that Luis doesn't believe them when they were aboard the Gauntlet Runner on the way to Verga Island. Now, Luis already suspects that they're a rat, so what does he do? He sends them on a quest to recover a weapon that nullifies the royal magic. Why on earth would you do that? You give him the key to killing you when you suspect that he's the rat. Why on earth would you not do that yourself or send somebody else? Furthermore, Luis never questioned.
Okay, I give up on this. It's like he's not engaging with this. Yeah, he wants the weapon. He wants to fake his death. That's what he does. Actually, that's his backup plan. His backup plan is to fake his death. And that actually works out brilliantly for him because it exposes the real crime, the real criminal that he got sort of saddled with in the story. I'm just like, this video is incredibly stupid, incredibly reductive. I doubt it gets much better after this point. Yeah, the one that I really wanted to cover. Okay. The moral dilemma that broke.
Yeah, but they are genuinely.
Have you seen this yet?
Oh, for fuck's sake, cut this guy. Cut him.
Oh, you should have saw what he was doing on Twitter, okay?
I've seen that. I've basically dunked
to
on
him.
him.
He was hiding like, pay me $5. Like, why are you being such a fucking dickwad about
Weasel.
this shit?
Yeah, but like one thing, if you are on a gaming arc and you're playing games, here's a suggestion. A really good JRPG, Xenogears, you can emulate it and have some nice gameplay.
Yeah, Xenogears is a classic, okay.
Yeah, and also recently there was a list of top 20, top like 100 or something like PlayStation games, and guess which was number 3?
Tell me, I don't care about these fucking lists, but let me know.
Basically, the first one was Final Fantasy VII, and the number 3 place was Xenogears. The funny thing is, Xenogears was supposed to be Final Fantasy VII, but it was too dark, and they basically said, nah, make your own shit, and they made it into its own game. So
Yeah,
the eternal rivalry of number 3 versus number 1 is forever going to happen.
Yeah, a lot of people think 6 is the best Final Fantasy game, but Final Fantasy VII is the go-to. I mean, I
Yeah.
can understand why a lot of people like 6 over 7. It definitely has.
No. I'm saying like the number one game was Final Fantasy 7 and 3 was Xenogears, and I'm joking that like these two games were supposed to be like the same game, aka like the Xenogears was supposed to be Final Fantasy 7, but in the end Final Fantasy 7 became Final Fantasy 7 and Xenogears its own thing, and it's like a joking rivalry of those two. There are
Yeah,
also
it's
people
also
as
sort
well.
of like the whole thing between Resident Evil and what was it, Silent Hill franchise.
Yeah, kind of, sort of. But yeah,
I think
if
they had a similar. Maybe I'm mixing
devel-
that up with a different series. Silent
development
Hill.
idea or yeah, maybe I'm not sure. But yeah, play Xenogears and I'm head out already. See ya.
Peace out.
Play Xenogears. I'm showing Xenogears here.
That's fine. That's fine. I played it a long time ago and I did enjoy it, but I don't remember it very well.
Well, replay it, why not? Anyway, I'm shilling it. Goodbye.
And people sent me death threats. So now I get to use the power of my YouTube channel to prove my points. So first of all, spoiler.
I should have really had a sort of thing. Yeah, it has to do a whole death threat little thing in the beginning because he's trying to be controversial, trying to drum up shit by being a shitbag.
Adventure that retraces the hero's party's steps, stopping at all the towns and villages they originally stopped at, so we can see how things changed over time, or rather, how Frieren didn't. And through the
Even from the very start, how Frieren didn't. But she sort of has. Just rather. It's a complex matter there.
this journey beyond Journey's End, we get to see her and her new companions develop and grow, as this emotionless elf girl starts to value the people around her. But like I said, the actual
Yeah, and he's sort of leaving out that this sort of setup was forced upon her by the original Heroes Party. They went through their journey, they defeated the Demon Lord, they came back, they realized Frieren was how she was, that she didn't feel any emotion. And there's a lot of things that hit her later on after they die. The setup for this journey here, beautifully crafted. Okay, let's see what this guy has here. Let me just call him Lex to give the dipshit a name.
real plot, the bulk of what we spend our time doing, is seeing Frieren and her party fight enemies. Mostly in this kind of episodic adventure format. We head off to a new location, find they have some problem, typically monster related. We then solve said problem by killing said monster and move on to the next location. We might slow down while the party is traveling and meet new characters and go on fun side quests.
Again, the episodic nature of this, I think he's really it's almost contradictory to what he said earlier. It's a journey. There's certain milestones along this, and maybe I shouldn't get so nitpicky in the beginning because it really gets weird. His attempt to break Frieren.
Able to kill them. And not only has she killed the most demons out of anyone in history, but she has become so famous for this that her nickname among demons is Frieren the Slayer, which, if you didn't know, is the Japanese title of the show.
今にわかるわ。
I don't understand about this fucking stupid ass relevant point here.
Undeserving of any sympathy, who we're told should be killed without mercy. Or well, we're told.
And you're mad about that. You're mad that they went with a very traditional method, aren't you? Okay, maybe not. Maybe you're just trying to be a contrarian, trying to find the flaws, trying to strut the stuff with your fucking morality. I mean,
We're told that demons in Frieren are very strange creatures, though, right off the bat, because there is no like evil god or dark magic that really created them like in most fantasy settings. They seemingly don't have any connection to divinity at all. They're just a species of creature, same as everything else. And it's even revealed that they're a product of evolution. So the name demon is really the only connection they have.
Keep that in mind, folks. Evolution, because I don't think he understands evolution at all. Maybe he does. Maybe he does. He has some built it. He goes through this stuff and he like tries to do this weird sort of wibbly wobbly later down the line sad sort of straw man sort of defense against his own point, which I think is rather bullshit.
They have to like biblical demons. They are monsters, though, a vague classification in the story that basically just serves as a catch-all for anything you're not supposed to feel bad about killing. Dragons, mimics, big fucking wolf things, they're all monsters.
Yeah, definitely a feeling that, taking away the agency, you can just kill these. They have no agency. He's trying to give the demons and the monsters agency. Great job, man. Can't accept the fantasy world for what it is, so you gotta try to nitpick it to the flaws, to break it, because I'll point out a few things.
All monsters, which in the world of Frieren means they're evil, and they dissolve into mana upon death. It's this very video gamey way of basically telling the audience don't worry about it, and allows the author to paint.
Nope. It's just a more, video gamey way. You know how demons turn into particles of mana when they disappear, when they die? Yes, they're magical beings, not completely physical in nature. It's like he doesn't understand the sort of metaphysical nature of the supernatural beings in a lot of worlds. Berserk has this also. But you know what? Metaphysics, also probably not a strong suit, along with evolution, which is a theory.
To paint the world in a clear black and white, as these monsters serve as the fodder enemies we fight week after week. However, even from their introduction, demons are shown to be very different from every other monster we encounter in the story. Most importantly, by being much more intelligent. Dragons are said to be maybe the second most intelligent of the monsters, but they don't really do much to act like it, and things like mimics and beasts are...
And I believe that's a young dragon that they sort of go over, just trying to find the flaws of it. Again,
just completely mindless. It is only in demons that we see actual human intelligence, and quite a lot of it. And when we first see demons in the story, you might be surprised to see that they can express emotions and empathy and kindness. They can speak with humans, and quite eloquently, in fact. They seem to be pretty dang human themselves. You know, if you talk to any demon on the street, you would most definitely be fooled into thinking they're a race of sentient being, not a monster. And many people are fooled, because it's a trick. The way demons are explained to work in Frieren is a lot like mimics. This creature that I mentioned they evolved from was apparently something that could replicate human voices and cry for help, getting people to lower...
Yes, evolution is the case there. And you're assuming what is known by Frieren is the complete truth. There is unreliable narrator. Frieren should know this, but I think her master, I don't think the master was probably completely honest, given the very nature, the very deceptive, cowardly nature that Frieren was taught.
People to lower their guard to go after it, only to kill them. But demons evolved so much from that creature that they are now able to fully replicate humans. They look like humans, aside from the horns in their head. They can act like humans, even expressing complex emotions, and they can speak like humans and understand our language, but all in service of being able to kill us. All as part...
Yep. Reductive take here. Because he is just doubting. Press X to doubt, man. Press X to doubt.
Part of a deception to lower our guard, as we're repeatedly told that demons are actually nothing more than wild beasts, savage monsters who will do anything to satiate their desire to kill. This description of demons as wild beasts is actually one that not only Frieren the character gives, but the demons agree with. I mean, in their introduction, one of them looks into the camera and says, "Yes, we are wild beasts. We just want to kill humans. Frieren is right about us." And their actions...
Yes, but he's discounting the possibility that they're willing to lie. Frieren can lie. In fact, she does with her aura. That's sort of why she gets coward, a point he brings up later. And demons are surely liars if it's in the service of their goal. And it's an inhuman mind. I would best compare them. Well, at least I started writing a script, but this has so much in it, I thought I would just do a stream and wing it.
actions largely align with this, as in pretty much every subsequent encounter we have with them, they are lying or killing humans, usually resulting in Frieren stepping in to live up to her nickname. So the story makes it incredibly clear very early on and tells us over and over again that demons are evil. Monsters that kill and eat people without remorse. Any bit of emotion or empathy they might show is just a part of their deception. So if you see a demon on the street, you should kill them, because they're definitely going to kill you. Frieren actually wants to go so
Do you have a secret problem with this? You reiterating this. Is this dehumanizing? Are you trying to say this is... It almost seems like he's projecting on top of this. Like totally evil. How is such a thing? It's a fantasy world, dude. And your arguments aren't even that great to break the world building. Yeah, you give a good try, but the sort of cope that seed a couple of places sort of shows you're not as confident. You're just baiting for engagement, and I'm playing into it. Fair enough, but hell, thought it would be good to do this anyways.
Go so far as to eradicate them entirely. But the problem with this is that while the story is telling us they are mindless, immoral killing machines that warrant the protagonist wishing for their destruction, it often shows us something very different. And I'll just...
No, the story doesn't tell you this. Characters within the story, known for lying, tells you it. There is a distinct difference that he's not really making here. Or he believes all this is honest, although he's trying to prove that the show is lying to you. But you have to assume that it's the show telling you this and not the characters known for lying.
I'll just go over a few examples. The introduction to demons in the story begins with a group that is trying to make peace with the residents of a town that Frieren is visiting. Frieren actually sees them be welcomed into the town and moves to attack them before getting arrested, which is where we get the scene of her calling them wild beasts. And our introduction to the demon's trickery, which proves Frieren right, is when during the peace talks, one of the demons is threatened by someone over the death of their son, to which the demon responds by saying,
okay, he has this whole weird thing. I've seen another response, and that person, it's like, yeah, this is stupid. Using the term father, they don't have actual parents. They evolve. He has many points that sound on the surface rather good. Yep. Stopped you from killing
this
them.
is a reveal for the audience. It's just laying it on thick that demons lie and kill, and that's it. But importantly, it shows they lie out of self-preservation. In fact, that's the most common way we see them deceiving people, begging for their life. Which is also strange because we're explicitly told they are being deceptive by doing this, yet they are genuinely begging for their life. They genuinely don't want to die and are acting afraid of dying.
How can they kill people if they die? Riddle me this. Do you want to answer that? Of course not. You did a video instead of a discussion, so you wanted a platform and you wanted engagement. Fair enough. Still a bit lame.
In order to not die. But if that's not enough, demons show actual genuine emotion all the goddamn time. They are often described as prideful and arrogant. They feel genuine excitement and anger and shock and fear in ways that cannot be explained by them just imitating humans to get an advantage, as it is so often not beneficial in any way.
Okay, this is where the android comparison and probably his lack of fucking general fiction in general comes into play. Androids, do they have emotions naturally? No. Can they be programmed to emulate emotions? At least in fiction, that's correct. You talking to a bot, it could act like it has emotions, but it's just an algorithm. The whole, if you equate these demons almost to a robot programmed to kill all humans, if I was doing a video, I'd definitely have a Futurama quote. Destroy all humans.
With demons calling Frieren a bitch or getting mad at her when she kills them, or expressing some emotion when humans aren't even present, sometimes even in their inner monologue. Going even one step further, one of the first big fights in chapter...
Again, internal monologue. ARM. Damage assessment. How can you kill someone if you don't have assessment? I mean, I'm not discounting this thing. I'm just saying there's a whole bunch of counters to a lot of his points here. And he's laying it on thick over and over and over.
chapter 20, the conclusion to the demons pretending to make peace with the town ends with one of the demons getting cut in half by Stark and the other demon crying out their name, which gives Fern enough of an opening to kill them. The way the anime frames it makes it seem like they might just be calling for their ally to help them, but they do cry out after the other demon is dead while looking in their direction, after it's already been established they can sense when another demon dies. So this feels almost intentionally written, like the demon is.
But when that woman was cut, she cut out, you think her life just went out instantly. He's the one trying to compare these demons to humans with actual emotions. Was she crumbled before he looked? And even if your ally was damaged and you knew they were fighting a different opponent, wouldn't you be wondering if someone was coming at your backside? There's so many reasons that I can come up with. But he's got his little speech, so let's keep it going on.
Demon is crying out because their ally died. And it's made pretty clear the crying out is what drops their guard and gets them killed, which looks to me like a pretty...
No. Now, if they showed anger towards their ally dying, being distracted by the calling out and the sensing of the damage, you don't know how quickly the sort of sense of their mana fading out would work, or if it works if they don't focus on it. There's so many unknowns. He's just assuming so much based on what? I just don't know here.
Pretty clear-cut expression of empathy. Now, you can maybe argue that the demons have just gotten so good at mimicking humans that they do so involuntarily, but if this is involuntary, often completely detrimental, and ingrained within the demons so deeply they even do it when nobody else is around and cannot stop doing it to save their life, then there is functionally no difference between the mimicked emotion and the real thing. Though perhaps the strongest contradiction in the demon's nature is that they do actually have some sense of morality. The one...
Yeah, before he goes on to this point, evolution argument, which comes to it, he might be right. Functionally, not the same. Functionally, the same if they mimic it so well. But Voight-Kampman test. Again, the robot thing, completely. If they design these sort of beings, these demons, which he found some weird little thing in the beginning, the monsters, demon stuff, went way too long on that. And the robot comparison, perfect example. And since this is fiction, it's sort of they can do anything unless there's something to contradict it from the actual story, which I don't know if he brings up, because I was like, this is some shitty ass stuff here. And this next part makes me think he doesn't think hierarchies exist outside of intelligent beings. Plenty of non-intelligent beings exist within a hierarchy. It's just a survival mechanism. Not even a survival mechanism. It's more of a pack predator. There is alphas within predators. Why would that not exist in the predators for humans? Let's see if he actually counters that sort of pack predator, or if he just wants to use his hierarchy bullshit, because he goes on and on with the hierarchy. I almost don't want to go over how it goes.
Fighting her so she can kill them. It's something she's even taught Fern since pretty much the beginning. This is already interesting because it directly mirrors how demons trick humans with words to kill them, and it comes across as Frieren playing by their rules to get an advantage, literally using that arrogance the demons are described as having against them. But the more interesting part is that when that demon from earlier, the one who cried out at their ally dying, learns that Fern was concealing her mana, they call her a coward. They are visibly disgusted by it. Because again, demons are proud of their mana and think concealing it is a lowly thing to do. So
that's jumping to a conclusion based on almost nothing. Yeah, and it also contradicts the earlier statement of if they're functionally the same. A lot of this is hinging on if they show the same emotions, so good at showing emotions, they're functionally the same. That sort of counters this particular point. They will adopt certain personas that they'll probably take to the deathbed. Plus, there's nothing to say that this demon, hoping by calling this person a coward, she might fuck up in the future or stop doing this stuff. Calls her death in the future. There's just so many counters to this particular line of logic here. I mean, he's just trying to nitpick and find a way around the fucking story, trying to find the flaw. That's why he's calling it controversial. I don't think it's controversial. I just think it's being a edgy person mad that Frieren is so popular. Why other animes aren't, but that's just a theory. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how good that theory is compared to his crappy ass theory. It might be on the same par. Who knows?
So the demons' morality might not align with ours. They're still totally okay with killing after all, but they must have some sense of morality to believe concealing mana to trick them is
Again, no, they don't.
wrong. There is no reason they would react this way if they didn't.
Again, they functionally seem like they have artificial personalities programmed into them. And again, evolution sort of selects for traits that keeps certain beings alive to replicate. So these traits within evolution, which is a theory, rather good theory in my opinion, with a lot of supported evidence, but still a theory altogether. It selects for certain traits that the most successful ones will sort of replicate, as with the father point that he's so stupidly like, they don't have fathers. Why would this younger demon? She's following this more powerful demon to learn how to kill humans effectively. And there's nothing, and the whole thing about they wouldn't worry about survival. I already brought that up. I don't know why survival would necessarily be a trait of emotion. Survival is just something that if you die, you can't do that thing you're programmed to do anymore.
Truly immoral being would not think there is such a thing as an action that is wrong. And there isn't even an explanation of this being part of their mimicry because it's something only demons care about. So right now, I'd like to take a tangent to discuss a different story that isn't Frieren, but it's one that Frieren very obviously takes a lot of inspiration from, because it's the story most fantasy series take inspiration from, because it's The Lord of the Rings. J.R.R. Tolkien's fantasy...
Okay. At least I think he simps for The Lord of the Rings. Let's hope so. As I said, this is about where I jumped off earlier. But he's right. They have a different mechanic for their evil beings.
Series is fairly famous for having pretty definitive morality. Characters that are depicted as unambiguously good or evil, on the side of light or dark. And with this, it portrays some races as entirely on one side, the most common of which being orc.
Yes, because it's sort of a mythology for a certain culture. The dualities of culture, good and evil, simple, straight to the point, easy to understand, down the line. It's a morale. Apparently, Tolkien created this as sort of a myth for European culture. This is why a lot of people took issue when they tried to do a little bit of race swapping, because this is one of the things that I'm like, yeah, I can see why people would have issues. The same thing with a black Ariel. That's like a Dutch thing. There's arguments for why the race swap of that particular character, Ariel, and anyone in the Lord of the Rings. I mean, there's argument for the predating of Rings of Power, how they can change it. Yeah, Ariel's better. Lord of the Rings, good, but not perfect with the Rings of Power, with that argument there.
Orcs. They are human-like creatures who are bred for war by various dark armies, including Sauron's. They are pure evil, existing only to kill and destroy and oppose the forces of good. Their purpose in the story, much like the demons in Frieren, is solely to be an antagonist to our heroes that they can kill lots of without remorse. However, it's important to note that the evilness of the creatures in Middle-earth...
Again, that's a reductive take. They are to serve the Dark Lord in his goals. You're looking at it from a very reductive nature, that these things are just beings created for death, either to kill or to be killed, when both these beings have a purpose: survival of the fittest, the challenges of the world. But let's see where he's going with this. I don't want to spend forever.
Middle Earth, if you really get into it, all come from someone called Morgoth, who is the fantasy equivalent of Satan. And I mean that literally. J.R.R. Tolkien was a devout Catholic and modeled The Lord of the Rings heavily after his own religion. Morgoth is literally meant to be a stand-in or representation of Satan.
Yeah. This is what I'm calling the moral dilemma that broke Frieren. Just like a lot of these fucking essayists out there, they see something popular, so they have to fucking find a million ways to fucking tear it down instead of actually engage with it. So they find all these weird arguments out there. It's psychotic. I mean, I understand the logic of it. It's like the H bomber guy thing with Fallout 3's garbage. Okay, did he ever even follow in his Fallout New Vegas is great or whatever? He mentioned Many a True Nerd's video in it, like I will destroy it. Did he ever do it? No. He accomplished his goal. That whole Fallout 3's garbage, I went over it, although imperfectly. It used the same sort of tactic to get things out in the open there. But yeah, you got to love breaking, sort of counter arguing these sort of arguments and try to understand. I think that is what it is. Maybe there's an element that he thinks something like Naruto is way better written. Yeah, that was the theory I came up with. He mentions Naruto like twice, and I'm like, is this guy a closet Naruto fanboy? Because damn, he does bring up an example of this some part. And I thought, yeah, dude just wants to be handhold and told everything. He can't stand there being a mystery. And this comparison with Lord of the Rings, I think, is attempting to do this, but not quite sure.
A fallen angel who corrupts those around him, and is responsible for most of the evil in the world, as the creatures Morgoth and later Sauron control are almost all evil because of this corruption. Basically every evil, intelligent character in the novels, from Saruman to Grima Wormtongue, were not evil to begin with. They've simply been turned evil over time. Some by choice, others through torture or pondering their orbs too long. Even the giant flaming demon Balrog that Gandalf fights is described as being a lesser angel that has simply been turned. Hell, Sauron himself was corrupted. The only creatures that are described as being totally 100% evil from birth are beings created by Morgoth, who we're told are evil because they don't have souls. This is something that also comes directly from Tolkien's Catholic theology, by the way, this idea that evil cannot make, only mock. Satan/Morgoth cannot create anything with a soul, because to be born with a soul means you're a blank.
Yeah, that is a central premise of God. They can only twist and distort. What's your point? I mean, I'm guessing he's laying all this out to try to connect it to Frieren. I don't know what it's going to be.
You're a blank slate, and blank slates are good by default, so only God/Eru has the power to make that.
What? Was that sarcasm? Blank slates? I don't care. I don't care at this point. Let's go on.
Satan/Morgoth can only corrupt those beings. To make something evil by default, they basically have to be a homunculus with no soul or sentience. So when we get to orcs, the most basic and simple and one of the oldest and most influential evil fantasy creatures, J.R.R. Tolkien encountered a problem. A moral dilemma, where in many of the stories they show up in, orcs are able to speak. They're able to make decisions, express emotions. Treebeard describes them as participating in orcish mischief. And I mean, they still kill and eat people. They still don't have any human morality, but they understand what morality is and consider some actions to be right or wrong. So just on the basis.
And am I misremembering? I thought orcs were like a corruption of elves. Am I misremembering this? I'll fact check otherwise. I remember them being like a corruption of the elves.
But they understand what morality is and consider some actions to be right or wrong. So just on the basis of all that, they must be sentient. They must have a soul. And when the books treat them as unsympathetic monsters that are killed in the thousands, you can see where Tolkien had an issue. Because remember, all of the other evil creatures are corrupted and are thus given the chance to change.
Okay, why did Tolkien have an issue? I guess he's going to get to it. Just a long, drawn out, wibbly wobbly argument that I'm not making any connection to.
They have the choice to become good again, to fight this corruption, and many do. Several evil characters in the novels get redemption, and the ones who don't typically have some moment where they could repent but choose not to. And because of this, they're all shown at least some amount of mercy until they do something that proves they don't deserve it. Yet the orcs are never given this mercy, especially in the movies where they are just decapitated and bifurcated and mowed down without a second thought. They're never given the chance to change. They're never treated with any of the respect the other evil characters are. They're just...
Oh, okay. Getting mad that they're dehumanizing the orcs. Am I getting that wrong? This is just really weird logic. This seems like the extra credits video. Maybe the dude is pulling some shit from that. Okay.
fodder. The characters never even think of the possibility of them being redeemable. So this became something that really bothered Tolkien. He never explicitly commented on his feelings about it, but he did try very hard to find a possible solution for it, a way to justify the orcs acting and being treated
Let's see if he says it.
like that. Something you can especially see in his responses to letters that fans wrote to him about this subject. He even went out of his way to try and come up with alternate backstories for the orcs that...
Why not fucking read it? Oh, fucking hell. They're not easy to work into the theory and system. Only Urin could make creatures with independent wills with reasoning powers, but the orcs seem to have both. They tried to cheat Morgoth, Sargon, rebel against him, or criticize him. Therefore, they must be corruptions of something pre-existing. The men had not yet appeared when the orcs already existed. Run would not sanction the work of blah, 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 unless orcs were ultimately redeemable or could be amended and saved.
to letters that fans wrote to him about this subject. He even went out of his way to try and come up with alternate backstories for the orcs that would fix this, but always ran into the same dilemma. In one scenario, the orcs are descended from elves who were tortured and corrupted by Morgoth, but that means they have souls.
Okay. Yeah, this is the version that I remember. Is there alternative to Libyan?
And shouldn't have been killed indiscriminately. In the original scenario, the orcs are created by Morgoth as imitations of elves. But in that case, they shouldn't really be intelligent because that requires sentience and a soul.
Does this guy not understand work into a process? The Book of Lost Tales Part 2. Orcs, for all the race, were bred by blah 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 subterranean slimes, not hearts, granite, deformed, foul their faces which smiled not, but they're laughed at, of the clash of metal, and to nothing were they more faint to aid in the basis of the purpose of Melko. What? He did a rewrite. Okay, I'm not understanding where he's coming from. Saying I'm trying to predict this. I'm thinking he's going to go that Tolkien was dealt with this dilemma personally himself. So Frieren has to do the same because it's based on it. Maybe I should see it.
And a soul. The final solution Tolkien left us with in his notes before passing away was just to essentially canonize all of these different contradictory origins, give each of them in his different stories and explanations of the world, so that the true nature of the orcs was left mysterious and you wouldn't have to think about it. Though he did tend to prefer the idea that they were corrupted. To quote Tolkien directly, the origin of the orcs is a matter of debate. Some have called them the Melkorohini,
Yes, mystery. Since they're older race than humans and a lot of other beings, they'll want to create misinformation about them. The less you actually know about them, the harder it is to understand their motivations. It's completely understandable and something. The dog distracted me.
The children of Melkor, who is Morgoth, by the way, they're the same person. But the wiser say nay, the slaves of Melkor, but not his children. For Melkor had no children. Melkor was impotent to produce any living thing, but skilled in the corruption of things that did not proceed from himself, if he could dominate them. But if he had indeed attempted to make creatures of his own...
Yeah, also the fact that there was a little bit of Tolkien being against the Nazis at the time, the Nazi regime, who were trying to destroy fucking history, this could be a parallel with that. You know, the whole idea of rewriting the past, because he ultimately came against the Nazis. From what I remember, it's been a while since I read up on Tolkien and his sort of a big biography, and I could be wrong. I've done a video going over Tolkien and orcs for extra credits a while ago.
Of the incarnates, he would, like Aole, only have succeeded in producing puppets. His creatures would have acted only while the attention of his will was upon them, and they would have shown no reluctance to execute any command of his, even if it were to destroy themselves. But the orcs were not of this kind. They were certainly dominated by their master, but his dominion was by fear, and they were aware of this fear and hated him, of necessity being the thing he tormented. Not even writes in her...
Okay, sorry, I didn't need all that. I don't know why he made that decision to leave in that big ass section what's needed. There's a lot of unnecessary stuff in here. I don't think he's trying to obfuscate some of his arguments by stringing it out, but it is a possibility.
Monstrous villains for a fantasy novel couldn't help but think they weren't inherently evil because of the way he wrote them. In a story with a literal evil magical force, even he felt that after inadvertently giving them intelligence and emotion and thus sentience, they were closer to corrupted men than purely evil beasts. As Christina Fawcett writes in her analysis of Tolkien's morality, as figures of corruption, the orcs are opponents in an ideological battle, while other authors incorporate...
I am going to have to... I might actually make a short cut up on this and check some of this stuff. Okay. Yeah, not dealing with this just now. Actually, oh God, you might need to work it in. I'm
Middle Earth. Yet knowing their origin does raise disquiet about the fight between the orcs and the other races of Middle Earth. Going back to Frieren, it should be obvious from everything I've set up that we encounter the same dilemma that Tolkien did. If demons are pure evil, they shouldn't really be sentient. And if the demons are sentient, they shouldn't be pure evil. However, demons in Frieren are shown to be clearly sentient. They're easily more intelligent and inquisitive than even the orcs.
Again, you can't make that baseline assumption. You don't know enough. You are assuming it's based off of fucking Tolkien. This is Japanese. Is this guy just not aware of how the Japanese liked? Is this Lex guy not aware of how the Japanese likes to distort Western mythology for their own means? Like, Neon Genesis Evangelion is a really, really fucking convoluted distortion of basically the Bible. The sort of beliefs within that, told with super beings from aliens and reincarnations. I don't want to go into all that, but yeah, they distort the fuck out of Western ideas, and it morphs over time. The transfer goes over. There's a lot of shit inspired by Star Wars, Tenchi Muya. I could go on and on about that particular thing, but just because it's based, the Japanese has different takes on this. So this automatic assumption that what Tolkien, the conclusions Tolkien came to, is probably the conclusions that Frieren should be following, if I'm following his argument correctly, is just something not based on logical, rational thought. And I am curious about that essay, who that was and what their particular perspective on Tolkien was. The Tolkien Society, experts don't really honor the lore when it comes down to it.
The orcs are. We've seen plenty of evidence of them showing emotion. You can make a strong argument that they express empathy too, and they have a clear-cut sense of morality. So if we
No, all of these are arguments. All of these are theories that there are counter theories for. So where are you going to go from there? Just assuming you're true and moving on past it? I think that's fine, but I still think it's incredibly shaky foundation if that's the way he wants to play it in this video.
If we handed Frieren to Tolkien and asked him to evaluate it, I strongly believe that he'd think the demons weren't worthy of mindlessly killing. They should have a soul, and any evilness on their part would be due to a conscious choice or corruption, which could always be reversed. Now,
why do people like speaking for the dead? Interpreting them via other people interpretation of it. I'm not saying he's doing that directly. He is using some of Tolkien's own ideas, but this is a little weird.
Now, a lot of Tolkien's dilemma is based on his Catholic beliefs, his ideas about unambiguous good and evil and the existence of a soul. But just to make things clear, even removing the concept of soul's religion and definitive morality given by God entirely, which is pretty easy to do because Frieren is a bit more agnostic, the dilemma still applies. Because what the soul means is more important here. Creatures who are sentient and intelligent and capable of morality are said to have a soul because that's what grants them higher consciousness. And any being with that must also have the other aspects of consciousness, the ability to reason, be self-aware, have free will. It shouldn't be the entire race by default. The demons that committed atrocities and participated in a violent war are not excused by the knowledge that they may have the ability to become good. The demons killed throughout the show are almost always instigators to conflict, after all. But it does raise disquiet about Frieren's intent to eradicate them. Anyway, it's time for manga spoilers.
Spoiler about manga, I've not read it. So he'll have me disadvantaged. He'll have me and a lot of people at a disadvantage. Maybe I should read it, maybe I shouldn't. No fucking clue with that.
Spoiler alert, it doesn't go well. Now, the specific arc I'm talking about is the Golden City arc, or El Dorado as the most popular fan translation calls it. Leading into El Dorado, there are a couple of interesting interactions with the demons we see, most notably being another example of a demon asking a question about the meaning of something. This time, why humans care about their dead, before getting dismissed again. This demon is actually a young child who is shown to be happy and energetic like a human kid, even when humans aren't around. And in an interaction that honestly surprised me, they kill a human, look to their superior with a smile on their face, and say, I did it, master, praise me, and then get cut in half. What the fuck? Why? They think the human is dead, clearly, but they're showing excitement and looking for praise from their superior? A demon, a creature described as this emotionless, antisocial murder monster, is bursting at the seams with a desire for approval.
Again, Android program in theory. You can't dismiss it. I can't dismiss yours, but you can't dismiss mine. Why spend so long trying to break this down, going over a lot of things, trying to prove your point when you really got nothing?
Approval. It cares enough about this other demon that it wants them to praise them?
Okay. It's not that E doesn't have anything. It's just there's counters to it. It's simple as that. And he's trying to use Tolkien in this weird way to connect it. At least they admit it's more agnostic, like Evangelion's sort of manipulation of this. I'm almost curious to go through the mangas and seeing if there is actually evidence that would contradict his theories. But I doubt he would put that out in his own video.
Who skipped my spoiler warning, the basic premise is that a powerful demon, Moth, one of the big boys in the Demon King's army, has turned a city to gold and has been sealed inside it by a magic barrier. Long story short, he was the advisor to a lord of a city who put a bracelet on him, ensuring that if he ever harbored any malice towards anyone in that city, he would die instantly. Yet, he turned the whole place to gold anyways. Curious. Short story long, we spend several chapters exploring Mock's memories, where we learn that demons do not actually know what the concept of malice and guilt even are. Mock says he understands all the other emotions, fear, anger, sorrow. This is what helps confirm demons feel these things for real, by the way. But malice and guilt...
No. Understanding things on an intellectual level does not mean that you understand it emotionally. Those are two different things. You can understand the concept of it, but I am curious. Why? I am curious. He's almost onto something. Malice and guilt really are. Fear, death, rage, anger, sorrow. He's probably seen all these things in action. They show up physically on this. There's clear expressions involved with this, which is clearly highlighted even in what he's shown. At least he's showing the work.
Completely foreign to him, as they are to all demons. So Mock starts devoting his life to finding out how to feel them, because he considers himself a pacifist who just...
Okay. I become interested in humans for the first time in my life. A desire to learn more about them. This is a character who pretty much cannot achieve what demons are meant to be over a long time period. There is probably, I don't know. It's not that I don't know. I'm trying to find a particular perspective that would counter this particular claim here. If he understood humans well enough, maybe. Yeah, let me see where he's going with this. As I said, he has me in a complete disadvantage here. It's quite interested. I'd like a challenge. But breaking Frieren just seems like a rather weird goal here.
Devoting his life to finding out how to feel them, because he considers himself a pacifist who just wants to coexist with humans. Yet, the way he tries to learn what because he considers himself a pacifist who just...
Through the part of the demon's army, I've always been more of a pacifist and sought ways for us to coexist, even before they put the stone bracelet of servitude on me. I would like to know the context who he's talking to in this scene, because, again, it's possible he's lying and is hoping a way to get this bracelet of servitude off of himself. Is a possibility. Long-term goals, trying to figure out a way to achieve it, or there's something called mutation within evolution that can change. See, again, he's not factoring in the fact that they brought up evolution. Just because Frieren has a certain idea of demons, it doesn't mean that they can't, since they say they evolve, they could evolve again. So he could be right. Frieren could have a misconception of the demons, and the demons could be fine with letting certain people believe that. Evolve. And especially if Frieren sort of took in her sort of cowardly tactic, it would be a natural evolution. It might be a natural evolution to counter it. So he might be right here, but let's see what it's got.
Who just wants to coexist with humans. Yet, the way he tries to learn what emotions are is just by slaughtering villages and getting kids to kill each other in front of him. This eventually leads him to become the right-hand man of a corrupt lord, who becomes his best friend, since they both openly consider themselves evil and think they can learn from each other. And he serves this lord for many years. It takes 20 before someone even...
How does he kill him? I'm at a loss. It sounds like he's actually serving the purpose he was made for via this particular friendship with the human. Feel nothing, emotion I cannot comprehend. Sociopathic behavior. And yet I feel nothing. Feel nothing is it a emotion I cannot comprehend? Yeah, can't comprehend. Yeah, I feel nothing. To this day, I've yet to discover what malice or guilt really are.
In front of him. This eventually leads him to become the right-hand man of a corrupt lord, who becomes his best friend, since they both openly consider themselves evil and think they can learn from each other. And he serves this lord for many years. It takes 20 before someone even thinks to put that bracelet on him. But...
And here's what those cutting men demanding, blah, blah, blah. Okay.
Eventually, after feeling like he learned everything he could, Mocht turns the town and his best friend to gold anyways, just to see if he feels something. He doesn't. During this, it is explained by a demon that demons do not feel malice or guilt because they've evolved to hunt and kill humans. So killing humans is in their instinct, and feeling empathy isn't. Because if they felt bad for their prey, they would go extinct. And this is coupled with the idea of convergent evolution, that demons evolved to be similar to humans, but are in fact so distant as to be alien to us. Just like how an orca and a shark might look and act similar, even if...
Again, okay, he brings up the evolution theory here. What? This almost contradicts what he says earlier. Maybe he's gonna... This is like a lot of fucking spinning around. And it's probably a little bit more deeper than this. The moral dilemma that broke Frieren. Maybe I'm misinterpreting the fucking title of this.
Even if one is a mammal and the other isn't. As they say, for a demon to try and understand human emotions would be like trying to understand the inner workings of an ant. And because their primary instinct is to kill, to search for coexistence means to endanger humanity. The closer a demon gets to humans to learn more about them, the more of them they'll end up killing, because they just can't help it. Even Mocked just destroyed an entire town on a whim. So at the end of the arc, when Frieren faces off against him, she tells him that even if it were possible for demons to learn to coexist, it would take so long and leave so many people dead that it wouldn't even be worth it to pursue. Frieren couldn't let it happen.
Like communism. Sorry, had to add that one in. Mock, your desire to coexist with humans will lead to its extinction. Yeah, it still doesn't mean he's just adapted in a really weird way. A mutation is going to be a byproduct of evolution. It doesn't mean the generalization is not correct. And they even say they don't feel emotions. They can at least intellectually understand those emotions, but there was some emotions they can't seem to grasp because of their very nature, I guess.
Happen. It's effectively not an option. As she tells us, the Demon King himself wanted coexistence too, and that's what led to 1/3 of humanity being wiped out in the first place. So this changes basically our entire understanding of the demons. Now the question of evil is fully shifted from any kind of magic or divinity towards essentially biological determinism, the idea that they're programmed to act this way and don't have any way of...
Yeah, it's evolution. That's been there from the start. What? I brought that up earlier. The understanding of evolution. And he brings it up later. I hate the fucking arguments like this. Misleading is all shit. It's not the show misleading. It's his arguments that is fucking going all over the fucking place.
Any way of stopping it. Demons are born to hunt and kill, and it's so deeply ingrained in their alien nature that that's just how it is. They're not evil out of malice, just out of instinct. And I've seen people argue that morality shouldn't even be applied to the demons at all because of this, the idea being that a predator without...
Yeah. You can see arguments like this.
Empathy doesn't even know what they're doing is wrong, so they can't be evil. The specific line I've seen used being, they're like a house cat killing mice.
Yeah, it depends on what your definition of evil is. Inherently against humans would be an evil entity against humans. It's about the perspective. The term evil is just what you determine to be evil. Amoralistic, which the demons are, even when you have an oddity, an outlier, who's trying to break away from that due to circumstances, they take a different path to try to achieve it. Again, the sort of metaphor of a robot would work really well for this. Of course, the evolution thing does sort of... does it throw a bone in it? I don't fucking know.
Mice. But I'd just like to remind you, unlike a house cat or a tiger or a bear or whatever, demons are intelligent enough to understand how their actions affect people. And they already have an understanding of morality. That's the most important part here. They have a concept that you can do something wrong because that's how they view.
Yes, they know. They know that people feel that at least human beings feel that there is wrong things in the world. Coming back to this proves nothing. He's going with a baseline assumption that he's using one line to sort of support something a lot more complex.
They view Frieren's trickery. They just don't understand that killing people is wrong. They do not lack morals, they just have a hard time adopting out.
No, they do intellectually understand that other human beings would find that amoral. They just don't care about that. Understanding these concepts intellectually does not mean you can actually feel them.
Hours. Also, just because I've seen so much of it online, evil does not have anything to do with maliciousness. The fact that they feel no malice towards the people they kill means effectively nothing. By human standards and the standards of the story, killing innocent people is more...
Is he just arguing the evil part of this? Could just be mistranslation. Well, not literally a mistranslation, just a fucking interpretation of characters. What Frieren, other humans would consider them evil. Do the demons would probably just adopt the human terminology for that of themselves because they just imitate human beings. So I don't really know where he's going with this. This is ultimately pointless. Does it serve a purpose at the end?
Is morally reprehensible. It is an evil thing to do and to be okay with doing. The emotions you did or did not feel during, be damned. And they do it even though they don't have to. The story brings up multiple times that they don't need to eat humans to survive. Frieren even all but calls this an excuse when a demon says that's why they killed someone. Oh, and by the way, the manga does drop basically every other pretense that they're wild animals during this arc. I mean, throughout the whole thing, they're emotional and empathetic towards other demons, like, the entire time. Here's a demon being sad their friends are dead and helping another demon.
Why go so quick? Why quickly?
And empathetic towards other demons, like, the entire time. Here's a demon being sad their friends.
What's worse is all my friends died. The very idea of coexistence is dangerous. I don't have context for this. This is probably going to be a base.
And helping another demon because he reminded her of them. Here's a demon saying they use fear to control other demons. Here's a demon doing a fucking yandere smile because they just love fighting so much. Mocked when he dies, goes and visits his best friend for no other reason than because he misses him. I'm just going to stop considering this a point I even have to argue because it should be obvious by now. But as you might guess, even after changing our understanding, we haven't changed or solved the dilemma at all. Shifting the demons from the classic interpretation of evil beings created or corrupted by some dark force to what are essentially sociopaths with a serial killer gene doesn't change that they're beings who are told are wholly irredeemable because of this, even though they can think logically and understand morality and all that. We're just told that doesn't matter. They can't. Their intentions don't actually mean anything, because their nature is to be evil, and even if they try to overcome that, that will just result in them doing more evil. The story is still claiming every single demon is unworthy of mercy, and Frieren is in the right for wanting to eradicate them.
Okay. This all comes back to the unreliable narrator. How does the story tell you this? I'm tired of these people just saying the story tells. What's the story actually fucking telling you? Why do you think the story is telling you this? I mean, he laid out a lot of that. I don't know why he's trying to trying to sidestep and go all around this bullshit, all around the merry-go-round.
She knew about the demon's desire for coexistence all along, after all. This isn't even a revelation for her. She doesn't care if there's a chance.
Yes. What does that matter? The very desire that they want to coexist and they are incompatible. It's there's many different things. You can't trust them. Their programming will eventually take them over. That's the philosophy of Frieren. No matter how much they change, try to change as a species. Try to get away from that initial desire. They will always come back to their base instincts at some point. No matter what they proclaim. I mean, that seemed like a rather wild interpretation. Just because, like you, the Demon King wished for coexistence with humans. And that led him to destroy many nations and their people. To a point, humanity, oil and water, they just can't mix. Inherently, they're going to destroy each other if they exist in the same space. And the demons will always have that desire for humanity. It might take a different form or function, but at the end of the day, their nature.
There's a chance they might change. She wants them all dead before that can happen. And the story never elaborates on why this change is so difficult. It tells us it's difficult, that they just can't fathom empathy and not killing, and that they'd kill every human before they got anywhere, but it just defaults back to it being in their nature, which is apparently something they cannot overcome, even though humans and other races clearly can. Frieren's entire journey is about learning to connect with others emotionally, even though that's not in her nature as an elf. That's literally what the story is about. But with the demons, it just repeatedly says, it can't be done. That's just the way it is. And you'll never know why, because they're aliens, so we'll never understand them.
Again, They could have misconceptions of, like, some people don't understand evolution. Evolution scares some people. There's a lot of elements around evolution. And that's not even necessarily meaning this is evolution. I use the robot metaphor, but there is also the self-learning AI sort of programming installed within a robot that can adapt over time that would be more applicable to this scenario here. I just think this is ultimately stupid.
And the strangest part of it all is that this is happening while one of the most prominent themes throughout this arc, the one that Frieren herself faces, is the idea that nothing is impossible. It's a theme that exists throughout the story, but here they specifically focus on it. We see Frieren give up several times because she thinks something can't be done, and we see someone alongside her keep trying anyways. And through their efforts, they convince Frieren that it's possible, so she does it. Nothing is impossible in this world, says the manga, while having a character find it impossible to overcome their nature. While
Keep going on. Just the reiteration he does makes this very frustrating to deal with. Maybe this is one of these things that's sort of designed to be responded to. Always interesting to think about the reasons someone creates this. Sometimes people's intent, or they don't have intent. Just always find the construction of these fucking YouTube essays something interesting. They exist in a vacuum with no real pushback. There is some pushback in the comments, but not much sort of conversation going on. And yeah, I'm not quite sure what to deal with it.
While Frieren says it is impossible for demons and humans to coexist without bloodshed. And while the story tells us it is impossible to understand the inner workings of the demons. So by now, I hope you can understand the part of Frieren that has been stuck in my mind ever since I first watched it. By adopting the tropes of Tolkien's fantasy, the story also adopts his moral dilemma surrounding the villains. And it does seem very...
Okay, there's a pre-built thing, adopting the tropes of Tolkien. There is adaptation, there is subversion, there is evolution of certain models that will sort of diverge from the typical thing. He just has a very simplistic view of this. Okay, I get the fundamental problem with this. Well, at least the fundamental problem I would have with this particular bullshit here.
I'm very interested in exploring this. It goes into great detail trying to understand the demons, what makes them different, what makes them evil. But in its attempts to further explain everything, it just loops back around to the same simple answer it was trying to get away from.
Just like this fucking video, you came right back around. Maybe this is a meta-analysis. This is truly S tier. SAS, video SAS here.
They're evil because they're demons. By being a demon, you are evil. Not because demons are corrupted by some magical force that makes them be that way, like in most fiction, but because they are controlled by some biological force that makes them be that way, which doesn't change anything. This, to me, makes the demons fundamentally no different than the orcs. Creatures the author wants to be pure evil because their role in the story...
Again, reductionist view. Yeah, you have a very simplistic view of this. What are you going to do with this knowledge, though? What was the fucking point of this? Please.
Is to antagonize and be killed, but creatures the author has accidentally given all of the components necessary to not be evil, which they have no real explanation for. So, in order to curb any hint of a dilemma, they give us an answer that can be best summarized as, don't worry about it. Like, if we take a character like Ubel, someone shown in the story to be fine with killing pretty much anyone, who has killed a lot and doesn't feel bad about it, who explicitly uses charisma in combat to get an advantage, and we compared her to a demon who did pretty much all of the same stuff she did, can you think of any reason given by the story why Ubel would deserve mercy and be allowed to live, and the demon would not, that does not boil down to because they're a demon?
Mercy's up to the person. It's up to the person at large. It's a personal choice. It's he taken issue with individual interpretations of individuals. That's what I'm getting here. It's not the moral. I mean, did it really break Frieren as a story? I mean, I skipped some of the beginning stuff where, yeah.
People call Frieren's handling of the demons a sort of subversion of a subversion, taking the idea that many pieces of media take the evil fantasy race from Tolkien and do actually try to redeem them. So Frieren not redeeming them is subverting that. But the idea of subversion is that it should add an interesting element to explore, or take some idea and...
Okay. It's getting into his own personal idea about subversion. And that's a subjective thing, dude. Let's see your argument why you think subversion should be how you personally think it should be. No, it's the struggle against the inevitable. It is the nihilistic nature of those beings, the futility of that, the absurdity of those who try to fight against their nature. Why the nature of Frieren, I think, has a different component to it. He's relying way too much on other people's arguments, I think, for this particular thing, not understanding things via the structure. And how maybe you could be right. I just think this is ultimately pointless engagement bait, maybe, for videos like this, responses. Hope so.
I would argue, is the El Dorado arc, which is entirely focused on their inner workings, yet results in the same conclusion we had going into it. It asks a lot of interesting questions just to give answers we already knew. It wants its villains to be more compelling than Tolkien's orcs, while still having them be fundamentally the same at their very...
No, you're reading too much into this from some sort of bias you have on this. You're trying to find the flaw, and you're fucking going into loops and trying to make a strong connection that you have actually not established the connection to Tolkien, to that, the evolution of fucking fantasy. That's what this is. And this is a different angle at this. That's the only thing you've actually proven.
Their very core. And this might be presumptuous of me to say, but a lot of my problems
Yes. A lot of your problems. Got it. Okay, I can accept his problems. These are your problems. Fine.
Have with Frieren are based on the same situation. The story taking a very simple idea, typically a trope from an earlier work like Tolkien's, and dressing it up as if it's going to be more complex, only for it not to be. Frieren is often praised for having better world building and setup than the typical fantasy isekai people hate so much, yet from the Tolkien races to the demon villains to the magic association, it uses all of the same tropes to build its world. Frieren is even an overpowered and rather simple main character, like many anime are criticized for having, further made less interesting by virtue of the story.
Yeah, it's like he doesn't understand the concept of the overpowered character that's been cropping up since One Punch Man. Taking the sort of tropes from other things and using it as a character. Yeah, there's sort of a cultural element, I think, within otakus, neats. And I think him taking this in isolation from just an evolution. It's not just an evolution. It's it's an evolution passed through a cultural barrier, which creates a rather interesting hybrid that tries to change things rather well. You're trying to change, it's just really hard. And just like the sort of issue the demons have, even if they somehow get it in their head because of whatever personality that they're mimicking gives them this desire, ultimately their inborn programming will sort of lead them. No matter what programming that they might layer on top of that instinct, will always take that programming in the direction to that end goal. Yeah, I'm stumbling through this. Oh, sorry. Yeah, ultimately, this is a pointless video. I mean, I sort of like it in a certain way. I think this guy is just really reaching. He has certain expectations and not understanding that things change, evolution. I think this is just engagement bait from what I know around it. It's just a circular logic that he's frustrated with because he doesn't understand the sort of concept that's been going with the overpowered. There's plenty of overpowered main protagonists in things, and a lot of them are just power fulfillment, okay? Power fantasies. Frieren almost adapts the sort of ideas of One Punch Man, the sort of apathy, which comes from Japan with a lot of its sort of problems. He's not adding in the factors, the cultural concerns of the Japanese people that is probably better understood through this. And it's even it's even sort of made its way into the West in many different concepts. And at the end of the day, he's not looking at this the right way. He's trying to just see it as Tolkien, but it's not. It's a adaptation through a cultural lens. It's just so stupid. Yeah. Again, he's also like the story proves her right. What does that do her good? Is it a good thing that it proves her right? I'm not even going to bother with this fucking last section, Twitter. So many people are obsessed with what other people are saying instead of actually engaging with the medium. A lot of people say a lot of stupid stuff. I'll look at a little bit of it. Fucking hell. Yeah, it's something that it takes an interesting look at the hero's journey. It takes the ideas that from One Punch Man that made One Punch Man so successful. It was a webtoon that was craptastic that it became enough of a phenomenon that when it was adapted properly by Madhouse, big ass success. They transferred it to a less studio. It was okay, but people hated it because it didn't compare to the previous iteration in the anime.
For not focusing on combat as much as your typical shonen battle formula, and for having an interesting use of magic. And yet, not only is it very combat-oriented, with an unironic Chunin exam battle royale, and a straight-up assassin.
And there's an element in here, you want to not feel bad about killing these demons. And he's looking at it in the wrong fucking way. You want to feel bad. You want to feel sympathetic. You're looking for it, but it doesn't exist. It's the unattainable goal. That's how I'm seeing it. Again, that's more my interpretation.
Assassination plot taking up a bulk of the story, but the combat, more often than not, devolves into something very similar to a shonen battle anime, just with magic as a substitute for a power system, spells substituting unique abilities. The very structure of the show is set up to be a subversion of your typical adventure story, taking place after the journey is already done. Yet the entire plot is still a major quest to reach the Demon King's castle that plays.
It's a character study. This dude he's trying to reduce this to, he tries to take advantage of the shonen tropes to give it a sense of excitement. It's, people need to understand Japan is a different culture. They feel the same concepts in the West that they adapt is sort of filtered through a different processy for a large majority. And you sort of need to understand the society of Japan to understand some of the reasons. Frieren is the typical hero's journey told with a very apathetic main character who she is very similar to demons in a lot of way. And she's struggling to change, but she has such a slow growth process because of her biology that I think her friends felt bad for Frieren. They know that she wouldn't be around, that she would always be this apathetic. So they set up scenarios with these two apprentices here to help her grow, feel emotions. They knew they didn't have a chance. They didn't have the life. They had their journey, and they just wanted her to come out of her shell. And they knew that they probably weren't the people for it. So when they came across certain people and saw certain elements of themselves within these people, they wanted, these are their children. These two characters, I suck with names. I think Ren and fucking hell, I should know. But yeah, they are a way to pass on that we care about you, Frieren. We don't want you to be alone. So we're sending you our children, and I hope it can give you something meaningful in your life. See, it's a character study. It's an emotional thing. The demons are a secondary thing that I think is really meant to serve as a sort of mirror to Frieren. It's not a subversion in the way his interpretation, fine. I think it's a little bit reductive and bullshit at the end of the day. And the fact that he has his whole fucking Twitter section just shows he just wants to win this fucking argument. Maybe he doesn't. But from what I know, that's what it seems to be.
That plays out and ramps up exactly like a traditional story would if they were on their way to defeat the Demon King, traveling to dangerous lands and defeating stronger and stronger enemies and taking time to stop major threats. It's not a journey beyond Journey's End, it's just another journey. Like I said in the beginning, I don't want to dislike Frieren. I think all of its ideas are right up my alley. Lord of the Rings is one of my favorite stories after all. But I think there's a big difference between The Lord of the Rings being a simple and straightforward story and not trying to be anything more than that, and Frieren wanting to do something different and interesting, but ultimately just wrapping back around.
Yeah, again, are you emotionless husk or are you a technical fuckophile? Oh, I've heard the term debate pedophile so much now. I want to use that term. I don't think that's him, but he's got some weird fucking something to prove here.
Evil nature so much that I expected the story to subvert it, and I was disappointed when it didn't. I didn't bring up anything about Tolkien's.
That is it. You had certain expectations going in, and when those expectations weren't met because of your biases, your expectations, you were let down. That's a you problem. And you're not engaging with the medium for what it is. When it's not just Tolkien, the understanding of this could be definitely done by what's started with One Punch Man. One Punch Man. Fucking hell. Been doing this too long at the end of the day.
Tolkien's dilemma, but I did reference the biological determinism in a way that I thought got the point across. And the reaction to this was intense. I've been the center of a couple of bad Twitter moments. I've had several viral tweets made specifically to try and dunk on me. I'm unlucky enough to have several accounts that just obsessively post about everything I do. I don't really talk about it because it doesn't bother me, but I thought it was especially funny that this reaction to criticism overrides everything else. Outside, the one that impulsive personality has power over the Watsonian, but the Watsonian has little power over the Doylist. The author is in complete control of this world and can override it in any way they want. It's not
okay. End of the day, I think I get it. I think this guy's severely retarded, emotionally, mental. Actually, he's probably overstimulated. He's looking for something. He had certain expectations going in. Don't know the reason why. Probably from what other people are talking about, from the typical tropes. And he's trying to apply the sort of superficial nature of fucking shonen anime to this particular thing. When the character studies have been explored a lot more. It's just his taste in mediums. He doesn't have a great enough of a grasp. Okay, they say critical drinker has a very narrow lens, but I'll admit it's a little bit narrow. But both of these, this guy Lex and the previous video, have way narrower, way more of a narrow lens on media than anyone else. The other guys, I know one. I just went over it because I thought, hey, let me see how this guy does. Ultimately, I gave him the same. Oh, well, it's two guys. Fucking hell. But yeah, ultimately, I thought it was rather shit. Brought up a few points I agreed with, but it viewed it as a rather reductionist view through, what is it called? A more libertarian. I don't know if it was an anarchic or libertarian viewpoint. Maybe that was misleading when he said, "Oh, taxation is theft," and bullshit like that, and getting mad that the story didn't really reward the player because he didn't engage with the story because he wanted something different out of it. I think that's what a lot of this shit comes down. People have expectations, true or not true, because often you get your hopes up, you have weird beliefs about how the way the world works, and when reality does not really reflect that, or society doesn't sort of reflect your own opinion, you have to find a way to just be like, tear it all down. End of the day, probably a fucking complete waste. But I thought this would be a worthy venture. And I am going to have to look up that quote. This could go a little bit deeper, but who the hell knows? Got a video on a particular video essayist that I think is 10 times more fucked than any of these two guys at the end of the day. But that's just an opinion, harmful or not. And I'm done with this. Peace out. Bye bye.